It's easier to say it than to actually do it. But we're moving towards that. We're moving into more renewable energy, solar, wind, geothermal, also with the power of our own volcanoes. And in the near future, to have nuclear plants where there's not that many other options, for example, in Santa Elena.
Your country also is the first in the world with the recent constitution to recognise legally enforceable rights of nature. What concerns do you have for the broader environment in Ecuador?
Well, we've been working for conservation. In Galapagos, we have very strict rules, especially on our waters and on the surrounding waters of the Galapagos Islands. And we have blue bonds that we've been issuing for a few years, as well as the largest issuance of green bonds for the conservation of the Amazon, with over 1.1 billion in green bonds there. So we're working towards conservation, but also we can't forget about our urban youth, which is right now the ones that are living in the highest level of poverty, violence. So we need to have a balance between true conservation, but also take advantage safely of our resources for the benefit of the people.
And what do you say to those young people? Because, of course, a lot of them are leaving Ecuador as well, aren't they?
A lot less. In the last couple of years, we've come down from over 200,000 people leaving the country to less than 20,000. People are staying. There's more opportunities. We've given incentives also and tax deductions to companies that hire people under 29. And that has increased our employment, especially for young people. These young people in the past didn't have many options. Some of them ended up, unfortunately, with the cartels, and some of them actually ended up dead. Now they have an option to study, an option to work, and to have a normal life, to have a family.
And while you're here in the US, are you trying to attract investment into Ecuador? You have the workforce that you mentioned there.
Yes. I mean, we're working not only with the US, but with all nations that would like to invest. So we keep a balance: Europe, China, the US, the Middle East, and the rest of South America. Our security partner is the US, but our second largest trade partner is China. So we need to keep a balance and respect all nations.
Thank you for listening to The Interview. You'll find more in-depth conversations on The Interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts, including episodes with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, author Azar Nafisi, and former Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard. Until the next time, bye for now.
From the BBC, that was The Interview.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Happy Friday. We made it, and happy spring. I think it's safe to say now we are safely in spring weather ahead. It looks like we're in for a fairly warm weekend in the high teens, low 20s, or even maybe in high 20s by the end of the weekend. But then next week into the 30s, more like straight to summer from whatever you call the last couple months. I don't even know if you can call it spring, winter, who knows. 5:57 right now, and let's say hello to the crew. Abby Adiemi is our studio technician, and Sierra Sanders is our studio director this morning, and Darren Morash is our YouTube producer this morning. Let's also say hello to Heather Wells, who is keeping an eye on news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a Manitoba MLA is being criticized for saying the farmer who killed Colton Bushy was a victim. Bushy was the 22-year-old Cree man fatally shot by a Saskatchewan farmer in 2016. Tory MLA Josh Ginter made the remark during debate about the right of people to use force to defend their homes. Melinda Mock, a Winnipeg lawyer and secretary of the Indigenous Bar Association, says Ginter's words were deeply troubling. We're going to hear from her coming up. And people in a small southwest Manitoba town who took matters into their own hands are now celebrating the outcome. They raised $2 million on their own to open a new medical clinic in Glenborough. We'll hear that story coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells at your CBC News desk. 11 right now in Winnipeg at the Forks. Our high today, we're going to be heading for a sunny 21. And then over the weekend, here in Winnipeg at least, there's a chance of a few showers with a high tomorrow of 17. Coming up this hour on the show, federal officials are warning about a new cybersecurity risk called Bad Box targeting smart devices. We're going to hear more about how criminals are taking over everyday gadgets to spy on their owners. And up first this next hour, does your wardrobe need a refresh? Well, there might be an event in Winnipeg for you. It's a free clothing swap. So first on the show, we're going to hear from the host of that event. That's coming up here on CBC after World Report.
On cue. The writer and director Boots Riley doesn't just make films to entertain. He hopes they'll inspire you to start a movement. Boots will be here to talk about why he's hoping his new movie about a crew of shoplifters who dismantle the fashion industry might just inspire you to start a revolution.
What we need is a mass, militant, radical labor movement.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Mark Carcasole. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says a question about separation will be added to October's referendum ballot, but it's not a straight independence vote. Instead, Albertans will be asked to choose between staying in Canada or directing the province to start the legal process for a future binding separation vote. CBC's Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau. Janice, a lot of people are looking at this question. They're trying to figure out what Smith's strategy is. Unpack that for us.
Yeah, in the wake of mounting threats to both her leadership and potentially national unity, the Premier last night seemed to be trying to call the question without actually calling the question. She said recent court decisions finding inadequate consent from First Nations, her government still appealing those, it makes it impossible to hold a binding referendum on Alberta independence right now. So instead we have this more consultative question. Stéphane Dion, the author of the Federal Clarity Act in the 90s, told CBC News last night that this fudgier wording may not trigger an intervention from Ottawa at this point, but in launching this campaign, perhaps an effort to appeal to or appease the independence camp, Danielle Smith also said she'll oppose what the separatists ultimately want.
I support Alberta remaining in Canada. That is how I would vote on separation in a provincial referendum. It is also the position of my government and my caucus.
In the wake of that statement that her caucus is going to campaign to stay in Canada, Separatist leaders last night called for their supporters to start organizing against Smith at the riding level, doubling down on their vision of an independent Alberta focusing on the U.S. instead of Ottawa's plans to diversify Alberta's economy. The wording of this double-barreled question is risky because it opens the door to voters thinking they can vote safely for independence as a protest vote because it's not binding. The only way to really put this to rest is going to be an overwhelming mandate to remain. So we'll see what mobilizes now on that side.
Janice McGregor in our parliamentary bureau. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand is calling the treatment of Canadians detained by Israel appalling. In a post on X, Anand shared that the activists have now arrived safely in Turkey and are receiving medical care. The 12 Canadians were part of the Global Samud flotilla. They were apprehended by the Israeli Defense Forces in international waters earlier this week. Anand is condemning the mistreatment of those Canadians after videos of the group were posted online by far-right Israeli politician Itamar Ben-Gvir. Uganda is suspending travel to and from the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo due to fears of an escalating Ebola outbreak. The epicenter of the virus in eastern DRC sits right along the border. The restrictions come as the disease continues its rapid spread. There's been an update from the World Health Organization this morning. They say health officials have already tracked more than 750 cases and 150 deaths thus far. Anna Cunningham has more.
Panic at an Ebola treatment centre, filmed by a health worker in the northeastern Congolese town of Rampara. Protesters seen setting fire to tents where Ebola patients were in isolation. It's believed that anger was sparked when hospital staff refused to release the body of a popular soccer player for burial. Even after death, Ebola patients remain infectious. Dr. Abdou Sebushish, a senior health advisor at International Medical Corps, says they are fighting misinformation as well as the deadly virus. Dr. Sebushish says some locals say it's magic killing people. Others don't believe Ebola exists. The echoes of grief resound in the city of Bunia in Ituri province as the body of one Ebola victim is carried away by health workers in protective suits. The M23 rebel group that controls part of the east has now confirmed the first case of Ebola in South Kivu province, far from the epicentre in Ituri. Concerns about just how widespread this virus now is has hit training for the DRC's World Cup team. Its soccer camp in the capital, Kinshasa, now cancelled. Dr. Oliver Johnson from King's College London says this outbreak raises problems since the US pulled out of the World Health Organization under President Donald Trump.
A World Cup in the US is exactly the kind of time the US and the WHO would be joining up. But they're barely on speaking terms anymore.
The WHO is expected to give an update on the scale of this outbreak later today. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
Chinese state media is reporting at least 20 people have died and dozens more are missing as torrential rain and floods soak parts of southern and central China. Forecasters say there's no immediate relief in sight either. Lisa Xing with that story.
In Enshi, a city in China's Hubei province, torrential rain has been coming down for days, causing flash floods. The worst storm this year, says state media. At least 21 people are dead, according to reports. 6 died after a pickup truck fell into a flooded river. Others are still missing, while more than 16,000 residents had to evacuate their homes. Enshi resident Chen Qi-xiu says when they woke up in the morning and looked around, it was like an ocean. After an hour, the water flooded into the room. As excavators worked to clear debris, remove mud, and even residents, authorities say they've allocated millions of dollars for disaster relief and emergency responses. Over 5 days, rain fell across a massive area, 1,000 kilometers, covering 7 of the country's southwestern and central provinces. Parts of Guangxi got more than 800 millimeters of rain, the flooding forcing schools and businesses to close. It's okay, don't be afraid, said this worker to an elderly resident who was crying. The best outcome is if you're safe. Chinese meteorologists say the unusually large areas of rainfall are slow moving. More rain is expected in the south, including in Hong Kong. Lisa Xing, CBC News, Toronto.
The Nova Scotia RCMP is facing some severe criticism for its handling of a sexual assault case involving a woman who was later murdered. Susie Butlin was killed by her neighbor in 2017, just weeks after her allegations of harassment and assault against him were dismissed by police. After examining the case, a federal watchdog agency concludes the investigation was seriously mishandled. CBC's Haley Ryan reports.
Someone had to fight for her.
For nearly a decade, Suzanne Davis has been pushing for justice for her best friend, Susie Butlin. The 58-year-old woman was at her home on Nova Scotia's North Shore, near Tattamagush, when her neighbor, Ernie Jr. Duggan, shot and killed her. The same man, she told the RCMP, had sexually assaulted her and been harassing her for weeks.
She was literally stalked and, just not believed.
Police concluded there wasn't enough evidence. On Thursday, the CRCC released a scathing report that found serious issues with how police handled every aspect of Butlin's case. Its 72 findings say there were grounds to lay sex assault charges against Duggan.
Why does this keep happening?
Retired RCMP member Kathy Mansley was the one who filed a complaint to the CRCC in the fall of 2021. She came forward after Davis spoke out about Butlin's case in the aftermath of Nova Scotia's mass shooting in April 2020. Some of the RCMP officers who were involved in the Portapique tragedy were the same officers who ignored Butlin.
I couldn't sleep at night knowing that, this lady should still be alive and with her family and her friends.
The report makes 79 recommendations, including creating specialized units to monitor all sexual assault cases.
This means that Susan Butlin did not die in vain. That is a big one.
RCMP Commissioner Mike Duame says he accepts nearly all of the report's recommendations and says the force has started taking steps to address them. Haley Ryan, CBC News, Halifax.
And in British Columbia, a man has been sentenced in what officials call the most prolific case of voyeurism ever prosecuted in this country. Police say it involves hundreds of female victims whose images were posted online. Jonna Bailan has more from Victoria.
652 women and girls. That's how many victims Saanich police have been able to identify in thousands of images and videos captured by 39-year-old Yin Young Derek Chan. Police say the materials were uploaded to a popular image-based social media app. A detective was made aware of the photos and videos being posted from the Saanich area. The investigation led to Chan, who has a previous voyeurism conviction. While executing a search warrant at Chan's home, police found devices containing thousands of photos and hours of video. Chan was arrested again in January 2025. Months later, he pleaded guilty to voyeurism-related offenses. Ninu Kang, Executive Director of Ending Violence Association of BC, describes the toll on victims.
It impacts you for the rest of your life. Any space that you go, you just don't feel safe. You just don't know if this will happen to you again.
Chan has been sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. The court has also ordered he be placed on the sex offender registry for 20 years. Jonna Bailan, CBC News, Victoria.
And that's the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Mark Carcasole. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. It is Friday, May 22nd, and a warm Friday ahead. 11 right now, but we're going above 20 today. We're going to get the forecast for you just ahead. Coming up this hour on the show, federal officials are warning about a new cybersecurity risk called Bad Box, targeting smart devices. We're going to hear more about how criminals are taking over everyday gadgets to spy on their owners. Also, Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand is in Sweden today for a NATO meeting that's focusing on Ukraine and European continental defense. We're going to get the details from a former Canadian diplomat. But up first here on the show, does your wardrobe need a bit of a refresh? There might be an event in Winnipeg for you, a free clothing swap. We're going to get the details on that first up here on the show with the host of the event. But right now, 6:11, let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. An 11-year-old First Nations boy was handcuffed and escorted from Brandon's elementary school after police say he punched the principal and smashed holes in the drywall. His dad wants answers. He says his son has oppositional defiant disorder, ADHD, autism, and is intellectually developmentally delayed. He wants to know why the school didn't call the family before calling police. A Manitoba MLA is being criticized for saying the farmer who killed Colton Bushy was a victim. Bushy was the 22-year-old Cree man who was fatally shot by a Saskatchewan farmer in 2016. Tory MLA Josh Ginter made the remark during debate about the right of people to use force to defend their homes. We'll hear reaction coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at your CBC News desk. Abby Adeyemi, what's going on with the weather?
Yes, Corey, finally we're expecting clear conditions across the province today, and we will enjoy that beautiful spring day. As you mentioned earlier, lots of sunshine for the regions down south, which will transform into a breezy afternoon and some cloud cover rolling in later. Though up north, we're still seeing most of the regions shake off the below zero temperatures we saw overnight. But for the Red River Valley at this time, it is a bright one outside. It's clear morning here in the city. We're looking at current 9, temperatures around 11 at the Forks and 10 at the airport. Sunny conditions already making its way. It's going to remain steady through the morning before we climb to a pleasant high of 21, which is actually the seasonal for this time of the year, though we will notice some mild breezy conditions coming out of the south. Across the southern regions, the Pembina Valley region, Morden is reporting sunny skies, 8 degrees at this time, warming up to 21. Brandon, there's a good chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorms this afternoon, but you're starting the day clear at 6 degrees. You get to 18. While for the Parkland region, we're spotting some foggy conditions, but the sun already making its way out. We should see your highs get to 19 later. While up north, also some clear and stable conditions in some of the regions like the Parfling Flon, starting with sunny skies, while Churchill, we're looking at 2 degrees. Just some light flurries spotted there, but that should clear as you get into the morning. So overall, it's going to be sunny and comfortable day. It's more like a spring day, or better say, I'll call it spring day across board from the north to the south. For the city, we're expecting clear skies, temperatures around 11 degrees at this time, and it's sunny outside, Curry.
And then next week, 30s is the forecast.
Don't say that yet. Let's deal with the weekend first.
Yes, exactly, before we're all just sweating. Yeah, thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Abby Adeyemi. Now, Sierra Sanders, our studio director, is in with a look at the commute. Hi.
Hi, Corey. Yeah, not too busy out there so far, or at least from what I've heard, the commuter line is pretty quiet right now at this time of the morning. But if that does change and there is something that gets in your way, whether you are here in the city or anywhere else in the province, I'd love to hear about it. You can give me a call on that CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, next up on the show, do you ever sound like this?
But what would I wear? Stupid. Ugly. Out of date. This is ridiculous. If I can't find something nice to wear, I'm not going.
Well, if you can relate to the Grinch, you might want to check out an event this Sunday in Winnipeg. It's a clothing swap at the restaurant Must Be the Lunch in Osborne Village, and they've been doing this since 2024. Melissa Kennedy is helping host the event. She joins us here in studio this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for waking up nice and early as well.
Thank you for having me here.
So just tell us more about this clothing swap and how it works.
Of course. So yeah, as we said, it's at the restaurant Must Be the Place. The lunch is the lunch menu that they have featured. But they are putting on an event for the community where people can bring their used clothing and swap it in. And every item you bring in, you can shop a new item from the community. So it's a really big closet we can all share.
And so you got some samples with you here.
Yes.
Just give it, because maybe people think old clothes, maybe it's got holes in it, maybe it's like moth-eaten. But you're just show us some of this. It's nice.
No, yeah, this is right from the community. So everyone's cool style down in the village where the restaurant is located. Mm-hmm. They bring in their items, and it's stuff that you can shop and wear. And we have really cool tastes. We've got some vintage items. You don't know what you're going to find there. And we have people that wait near the bins specifically for new stuff. It's super fun.
And what's the vibes of the people that come to these clothing swaps? Like, how many people come?
Oh my gosh, anywhere between 50 to 250 because
Really?
We have inside-outside events. So sometimes the foot traffic and people seeing it, they walk right in. But our loyal regulars, they wait for it. So
Really,
yeah,
eh?
people bring in their entire closet sometimes.
Really?
Yeah.
It must be neat to see the transactions between people, right? Like how is a clothing swap facilitate between two people? Like what kind of stuff happens?
Well, most people do it in their friend groups, but with us, we just wanted a community event where people can come to this neutral space. They bring in their items, and then they can shop closets that aren't even styles they might have been introduced to before. Because in our groups, we have secure styles, but someone like this vintage top, you never know what someone's going to bring in, what someone's going to connect to.
Right, and so it works, but you have to trade it for something else?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you bring in your item,
Yeah.
and whatever, the total of the items you bring in, you get to shop with that amount of tokens or
Okay.
items, and you can take that much out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And is there more interest this year just because of the economy, the way it is, you think?
Well, I think so. We have noticed a lot more this past year that we've been doing it. We've been doing it for about a year and a half now. The bar's only been open for about 2 years, so we've been trying to do this just to get the word out. But lately, people are really interested because stores are so expensive, especially even the secondhand stores right now. It's
Right.
rough.
And what kind of stuff have you got at it?
Well, at the end, I like to find things. I did take this scarf because I like it for October. It's very witchy. But yeah, you never know what you're going to find, what you're going to connect to. Like, there's some pieces that will shock you. Like,
and what do you hear from people who come about what the event kind of means for them?
it means a lot to them. Like, there are some people who wait for it. They don't shop anymore. They just wait for the clothes swaps. There are people who tell their friends, and then people are changing their habits to accommodate giving stuff to the clothes swap. Like, they're not necessarily donating to the big box like Value Villages or like the ones that are for profit. They're bringing it to the community so they can swap with their fellow community members.
And it's not just like, young hip folks either necessarily, right? It's a whole mixed bag.
Generations. Oh my gosh, generations are blending. So the residents in the nearby area, they get curious when they see the events, so they come down and they have a great time, and they're mixing with a younger generation, and they're finding pieces like, I remember that back when it was in style, and I guess it's in style again, or I would have so many clothes like this, let me bring them.
Is there like a cyclical thing? Is there a lot of older fashions that are coming back now that you're like, all of a sudden there is someone who's 60 who's like, and there's someone who's 20 who's like, oh my gosh, I love that blouse that you own. Yeah?
Always. There was a woman who came in and she found a pair of shoes that a younger woman had donated, and it inspired her. She came back in a whole new outfit later with a bunch of wardrobe, and she's like, here are these things that like I want to contribute because I want someone else to use them. And she got a drink, sat, and she just watched her items go. Like, it was people have so much fun with it.
Well, that's great. And what do people need to know if they do want to take part? Do they want to show up when this event's happening?
It is a free event, but it's also a partial fundraiser. So if you have clothing items, bring them in, swap them, have some fun. But if you don't have any items to swap, you can also bring cash in, and we sell tokens that do the same thing. And all that money goes back into our community events that we throw. So right now we're putting on a jazz festival this weekend. That's free to the community. So it'll be happening at the same time as the clothes swap. So stuff like that.
Great. And it's this Sunday. What's just all the overall details that people
This Sunday, for sure, anywhere between 1 to 8, but we're going to try and get it to 12 to 9. We try and get it as long as possible, but 12 to 8 is what we're usually sticking with, but might be 1. We'll see. You'll see us set up. You can come in as we're setting up.
And all clothing welcome.
All clothing welcome.
Okay, sounds good. Melissa, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Corey.
That is Melissa Kennedy. She is hosting a clothing swap at Must Be the Lunch. It's located at 484 Stradbrook Avenue.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
It looks like this is maybe a one-day blip when farmers across the province need hot and dry.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take.
In general, it's harder to find a job even if you're educated.
I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. From 12:15 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
When I was 5 or 6, my parents gave me seeds and helped me plant them. That was probably close to 70 years ago. And here I am still gardening.
It just brings everyone together. Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you weekdays on CBC.
And today on Radio Noon, actually, I will be behind the mic, and the call-in segment today is a question because there was a big lottery winner. I don't know if you've heard around Whitemouth, someone won $42 million. So it's just a very fun Friday question, but maybe a serious question as well, depending. If you won $1 million, what would you do with it? So that's the question today on Radio Noon. 6:21 right now here. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Well, next up here on the show, Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand is in Sweden today for a NATO meeting that's focused on Ukraine and boosting European defense. And Canada's role in NATO is expanding in Europe as the United States scales back there. And for more on all this, we're joined by Colin Robertson. He's a former Canadian diplomat and a fellow at the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. Good morning.
Good to be with you, Corey.
So just give us the top line here. So what's important about this particular NATO foreign ministers meeting?
Well, as always, the Ukraine will be a major topic of discussion. But as importantly, where is the United States? The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is going to come, and the United States has been quite unhappy with the NATO alliance and what they feel the lack of support to President Trump's adventurism in Iran and his efforts to unblock the Straits of Hormuz.
So then what's being, before we kind of get to more of that and what the U.S. wants out of all this, what's being discussed about support for Ukraine in particular?
Well, that's always, since the Russians went in 2014, and particularly since 2022 when they made the major invasion, it's trying to keep arms flowing to Ukraine so they can defend themselves, and as importantly, money so that they can keep the economy, their system going. As you know, as you've reported, the Russians have, through drone attacks and missile attacks, have done a lot to put out the lights in Ukraine by targeting electricity generation plants, and that's an important piece of why we provide them both with arms and with generators and things too, so they can keep their economy going at a difficult time. And the Europeans have just agreed to supply them with $50 billion in euros. The United States has said that this is really now a European problem, or a European and Canadian problem, because Canada, of course, is a significant backer, but both in terms of funds and arms to Ukraine. And of course, we've given a number of Ukrainians refuge in our country while the war goes on.
And there are some concerns, particularly around NATO's eastern flank. So what's going on there?
Well, the eastern flank would include basically those countries that are close to Ukraine, the Baltic nations, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, and NATO has what we've established what we call forward bases, and Canada leads the brigade in Latvia, and so we're providing 2,000 troops there as an example, and it's essentially to form a bulwark against potential Russian aggression, which we're seeing more of, although what we call hybrid warfare, both sabotage, disinformation campaigns, and the Russians are trying to redirect some of the drones that the Ukrainians are using into the neighboring countries like Finland, like Estonia and Latvia. And the government in Latvia just recently fell because of concerns that they weren't doing enough to defend against this kind of thing happening in Latvia.
And so, in response to all this, Canada, EU, they're stepping up on European defense, but the U.S. is reducing its presence there, just for the time being, at least, under the Trump administration. So you kind of spoke a little bit earlier about, Trump's, general frustrations with NATO, but explain kind of what's all happening here.
Sure. Put it in perspective. The United States created the alliance in 1949, and they have underwritten the alliance both in terms of money and arms since then, providing about 75-80% of the support. And successive American presidents, not just Donald Trump, but successive American presidents have said, you Europeans who have now recovered economically since the Second World War, you've got to do more to defend yourselves. We're not going to do it anymore because we're now preoccupied with what's going on in the Indo-Pacific, and in the case of Mr. Trump, what's taking place within the Western Hemisphere, as you know, with his concerns with what's going on in Venezuela and now Cuba. And the allies are now stepping up. The Europeans are essentially doubling their spending, just as Canada is, and creating an industrial base in Europe to produce arms as well, just as what Canada is trying to do. So that's one of the messages that Marco Rubio will be delivering, is that you've got to keep doing this effort because we can't support you anymore because we're waging a war with Iran, and we've been providing a tremendous amount of arms to Israel in their campaign since the Hamas attack in 2023.
And Ottawa is putting forward Canada's chief of defense, that's Jenny Carignan, as NATO's new top military advisor. So tell us about her and what this says about Canada's expanding role in European defense.
Well, sure. She's a professional soldier, a mother. She's got children in the forces. She seemed to be extremely competent. She's been chief of defense staff, which is our senior military officer, for the last couple of years, and we've now nominated her to become the basically the chief of the military committee, the chair of the military committee, which is analogous to the meeting of our ambassadors in NATO in Brussels. You have a military component, then you have the political component. And the last time we had a Canadian in that position was Ray Hanault, who in fact was from Manitoba. And that was back 2002, 2003. And I think the government's put her up because they feel that we're making now a credible commitment to NATO. We're reaching the 2% target. And I think they think she's got a good shot at getting the job. But to me, it also underlines that the current government is determined to be much more international. If we're to diversify trade, we are also going to play a bigger role. The Prime Minister has said we want to be a useful player in the world, and we'll start putting Canadians up for big jobs, as we used to do under governments like Brian Mulroney and Jean Chrétien.
And finally here, NATO's summit in July in Turkey is actually considered also extremely important by the alliance. So why, and what are you be watching for ahead of that gathering?
But watching the optics, what the Americans are really watching what Donald Trump says and what Secretary Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, say, because the United States, as I said, has been the backbone of the alliance. That's shifting, and the Americans on several occasions have gone as far as to suggest that NATO doesn't matter anymore and that maybe they could withdraw from it, and that would be rather calamitous to the alliance structure as we've known it. And so that means that countries like Canada are going to have to stand up more. So watching the developments there, I don't think the Americans are going to pull out, but that's certainly a threat out there. And you'll get a report card of where NATO's at this meeting, the foreign ministers this weekend, from the Secretary General, the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, who will say, well, here's where we're at in terms of readiness, but we've got to do more. We've got to do more to support Ukraine. We've got to do more about our industrial base, and we've got to basically take up the burden that the Americans have carried for the last 70 years.
Well, lots to look out for. Well, thank you very much, Colin, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Corey.
Colin Robertson is a fellow at the Canadian Global Affairs Institute and a former Canadian diplomat. Well, time now is 6:28 here. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. And lots to come still this next hour on the show. Warmer temperatures have kickstarted life in Manitoba's ponds. So CBC's Jim Agapito headed out to Fort White Alive to discover what's alive in the water. So we'll get a little bit of a biology lesson later in the show. Also, just after 7, many Cubans were without power last week, and one Manitoban thinks she can help, and she believes solar panels could be the solution to the country's energy crisis. So more on that story coming up after 7 o'clock. But this next hour here on the show, we are going to get an update on business and oil prices in particular are on the rise again. So we're going to hear what that means for the economy. And also an interesting story of why you might want to rummage through your basement for your kids' old Pokemon cards, because they are going up in value. So that's coming up in your business report just ahead here on Information Radio. I'm Corey Funk in for Marcy Marcusa. Time now for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 6:30. It's 11 degrees. It's a pleasant start to Friday. We start off with a mostly sunny sky, but then clouds start to move in late this afternoon. Bit of a southerly breeze, a high of 21. Showers expected tonight. A Manitoba MLA is being criticized for saying the farmer who killed Colton Bushy was a victim. Bushy was the 22-year-old Cree man who was fatally shot by a Saskatchewan farmer in 2016. Tory MLA Josh Ginter made the remark during debate in the Manitoba legislature about the right of people to use force to defend their homes. Premier Rob Canoe calls Ginter's remarks hateful and divisive. Melinda Mock is a Winnipeg lawyer and secretary of the Indigenous Bar Association. She says Ginter's words are deeply troubling.
I'd say the deeper concern here is not about retrying the case, but it is about the political use of this tragedy. So there is undeniably a racial context to this. There is a deep public impact to this case, and that's where our concerns lie.
The farmer who shot Bushy was ultimately acquitted of second-degree murder. An 11-year-old First Nations boy was handcuffed and escorted from a Brandon elementary school after police say he punched his principal and smashed holes in the drywall. His dad now wants answers. He says his son has oppositional defiant disorder, ADHD, autism, and is intellectually developmentally delayed. He wants to know why the school didn't call his family sooner so they could help de-escalate his son's behavior before police were called.
They should have called us before anything, because we could have went there and solved the problem instead of that escalating and me having to see my son get thrown on the ground by a guy and pushing his knee right into his face and cuffing him.
CBC is not naming his dad to protect the child's identity. In a statement to CBC, Brandon School Division says it is committed to creating a safe and secure learning environment, and police were called only as a last resort. To Alberta, where that province's premier addressed Albertans in a prime-time speech last night as voices that are calling for the province to split away from Canada are growing louder. Danielle Smith says the question of separation will be put towards a referendum this fall.
I will be requesting our government add an additional question to the October 19th referendum vote. Should Alberta remain a province of Canada? Or should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada?
Premier Smith says she would vote for Alberta to remain in Canada. This comes more than a week after a petition calling for such a vote was struck down in the courts. Opinion polls have suggested the vast majority of Albertans oppose separating from Canada. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand is calling the treatment of Canadians detained by Israel appalling. In a post on X, Anand shared the activists have now arrived safely in Turkey and are receiving medical care. The 12 Canadians were part of the global Sumud flotilla. They were apprehended by the Israel Defense Forces in international waters earlier this week. Anand is condemning the mistreatment of Canadians after videos of the group were posted online by far-right Israeli politician Itamar Ben-Gvir. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. People in a small southwest Manitoba town who took matters into their own hands are now celebrating the outcome. They raised $2 million on their own to get a new medical clinic. Glenborough's current clinic in the hospital basement is more than 70 years old. Dale Fisher, a councillor in the municipality of Glenborough, South Cyprus, is grateful for donations that poured in from several municipalities.
In 2 years, with doctor recruitment, with private money, to do this whole medical clinic for $2 million plus another $140,000 that went to recruitment to get the doctors here to open this thing. This is an unbelievable fairy tale that you would never think, I'm telling you.
After 2.5 years of fundraising, the new Spirit Sands Medical Clinic is expected to open next month in June, with official ribbon cutting in the summer. Well, in the Stanley Cup playoffs...
There's Caulfield scores! There's the answer a minute in! And return fire from Montreal.
It was all Montreal after that bounce-back goal to tie the game in the first minute. The team didn't look back, scoring 4 times in the first period, and the Canadians take Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final over the Carolina Hurricanes. 6-2 was the final score. Game 2 goes tomorrow night in Carolina. You can find more news updated throughout your day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
You must be devastated, Heather.
Not devastated. I'm happy either way. Honestly, the Habs are Canadians, but I really do like Nikolai Ehlers and Seth Jarvis on the Hurricanes. This is the first game the Canes have lost in the playoffs.
Wild. Also, I imagine Seth Jarvis's friends must be devastated too. They've been following him around. I wonder if they
everywhere. They go to the Olympics, Carolina. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at your CBC News Desk. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Corey Funk. In today for Marcy Marcusa, and Abby Adeyemi is in now with a look at your weather. Hello.
Oh, Curry, good morning once again. I can tell you that this is that one day where across board, the whole province will kind of enjoy more like a stable
we get one a year.
Yeah, that's stable spring conditions across board. I don't think any part of the province would want to say, oh, we're not feeling the spring vibes today. So it's more like across board, stable spring conditions, sunny intervals, even in the northern part, though there's still a good chance of showers here and there in most of the regions. Looking at conditions here in the Red River Valley region, we're expecting a sunny day with increasing cloudiness, maybe later in the afternoon towards your commute home, along with some windy conditions. But for now, the morning period, we're going to see morning temperatures hover around 10 degrees. Conditions will remain steady through the morning. Then we climb to that pleasant daytime high of 21. As mentioned, that would come with some mild breeze out of the south before you notice the showers arrive tonight into the overnight period. And across the southern regions, we're looking at 4 to 9 degrees depending on where you are down south. More than Winkler towards the Headingley area, and it's stretching all the way to Port La Prairie. We're seeing temperatures around 8 degrees at this time. We're already enjoying a mix of sun and clouds, lots of sunshine also in the forecast. Highs will be around 21 under some breezy conditions. Brandon towards Nipawin, we're seeing 6 degrees there, cloudy, high around 18. You do have a good chance of showers sometime this morning. And then from Dauphin towards the Russell-Roblin area, we're seeing fog patches here and there that should clear out. So you are aiming for a high of 16 today. Current temperatures around 9. Gimli, good morning. The Interlake region seeing 4 degrees and mainly sunny conditions at this time. You warm up to 20. Then we track into the central portion of the province. We're looking at the Pa, Flin-Flon, nearby regions. We're seeing sunny and mainly sunny conditions there for now. 2 to 5 degrees depending on where you are. A high of about 15 today. There's a good chance of afternoon showers. Norway House is around 2 degrees. Sunny conditions warming up to 17. Thompson, we're seeing about 0 there. Mainly did I say 0 at Thompson? Yes, 0 at Thompson at this time. Mainly sunny, but that sunny condition is going to warm things to about 19. Then for the Lynn Lake area, we're looking at 6 degrees with some sunny conditions there. High of 19 as well, under some mild winds. Gillam at 4 degrees and sunny. Tudula Lakes at 5 and sunny. Most of the regions up north will see highs between 17 and 19. But for the Churchill and York region, you're starting around 2 degrees with some sunshine. You only warm up to 9 today. So, Corey, it's more like a clear start before some afternoon clouds will roll into the southern parts of the province. But for now, in the city, we're experiencing this mainly sunny start with current temperatures at the Fox at 11, and we do get to a seasonal high of 21 today.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
That's Abby Adiyemi and Sierra Sanders. How's the commute going?
It is pretty quiet out there, Corey, on this Friday morning. I haven't received any calls on the commuter line, so to me it sounds like things are moving along smoothly out there on your commute so far. But if that does happen to change and something does pop up on your drive, or maybe you're walking, maybe you're biking, however you're getting around today, I'd love to hear about it. And you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. The number is 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Sierra. Well, time now for your business report with Phil DeMont. Good morning.
If you're down in Halifax, you're either a Bruins or a Habs fan, so there's a lot of cheering.
Yeah, and you know what? I lived out east. There's lots of Habs fans out there. As far as St. John's, too, everyone when I was living in Newfoundland was all Habs fans out there, too.
Well, I'll put it this way. When I wear my Leafs sweatshirt to the exercise club, I get yelled at.
Yeah, no. Then you just skip right over, come out west. Just get on that Jets jersey. Everyone will be happy. Everyone loves the Jets.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, let's start with oil prices. They're on the rise again today. So what does this mean for the overall economy?
Obviously, in the short term, it's an issue. West Texas Intermediate and Brent crude, they're up close to 2% on the overnight for Friday. Iran doesn't want to give up its stockpile of enriched uranium, and that's a sticking point for any peace deal between the U.S. and Iran. But where I'm going with this, the International Energy Agency this week said the world's oil supply is heading to a, quote, red zone. Now, that's a point, Corey, where the crude supply dries up, but gasoline demand picks up because of the summer driving season, especially in the U.S. and Europe. Record 39 million Americans expected to hit the roads this Memorial Day long weekend, and that's probably going to affect pump prices for the obvious reason. Bigger problem, most producing countries can't increase their crude output quickly. That despite the fact that crude price is actually up almost 50% since March. But Canada, the U.S., Russia, among other producers, they're at peak capacity right now. So you can't just kind of, bring in an extra shift and pull more oil out of the ground. It doesn't work like that in this industry. Then there are countries in the Middle East that have been hammered. Their facilities have been damaged by Iranian drone attacks. So here it's like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. Qatar's damage is so extensive. They were supposed to grow, I think, 4% this year. They're now expected to shrink. The economy is expected to shrink by 8% because of the war over there. U.S. economy expected to grow only at the same rate that it did last year, and that was less than 2024. They're expected to slow down next year. All this to mean, for me, oil prices are a bit of a toilet seat story. One day the prices are up, the next day the prices are down. But the signals are out there that the economic effects of this conflict, they're going to be around for a long time.
Also, a number of Canadian companies are now pushing Ottawa to limit labor strikes. So what's going on there?
Yeah, the federal department back in April responsible for Canada's labour market, they put out a consultation document to update the labour code, and they do this periodically. That made sense, and so the employers were replying to that, but they were also using the opportunity to lobby Ottawa to limit the ability of their strikers to work. Now, we're talking federally regulated industries, so railroads, airports, seaports, so Canadian National Railway, Air Canada, Rogers, those kind of companies. About 500,000 workers in the sector, but because of their nature, Canada's overall economy can be overly impacted by work stoppages in these sectors. So the companies, they were burned 2024, 2025, bunch of strikes at the ports, airports, there were railway strikes. So basically they're saying to the government, some sort of quick government intervention if a work stoppage looks like it's going to hit the overall economy. Now, they actually get that type of action from Ottawa anyway. A rail strike often only lasts a day or two before Ottawa intervenes and orders the strikers back to work. But something in legislation would make the process more formal, and I can see the point. On the other hand, for the unions, a rule that would have the government intervene in these strikes removes a key bargaining provision with employers, because you can no longer say we're going to be out for a week if you don't come back to the bargaining table, because the government is going to force somebody to come back to the table anyway. I also think there's something else going on. Prime Minister Carney's come under criticism recently for his industrial carbon policy deal with Alberta. Basically, environmentalists wondering whether he's too willing to bend to industry's wishes. Airlines and railways might be thinking the same thing, so this might be their best chance to weaken union bargaining power.
And finally here, why might you want to rummage through your basement for kids' old Pokemon cards?
Because they're the new Labubu dolls, if you remember those. Long lineups at stores selling the latest card. Mild-mannered adults duking it out to grab a Pikachu or Charizard card. Even reports of smash-and-grab heists at some stores, all for cards of fictional characters from a Japanese animation series in the 90s. But Pokemon's one of the hottest things in the collectible card market right now. Since 2020, the price of a Pokemon card up 1,300%. The big move was the Pokemon Go game back in 2016, where people in the real world would run around with their phones and capture characters. You know, you'd be in the studio, oh, there's Pikachu. So if you were there, you'd be able to capture them on your phone. It kind of led to the popularity of the cards once again. So they're now a speculative market, people buying in the hopes of flipping it for a profit. 2021, social media influencer bought a rare Pikachu Illustrator card for $5 million. That's enough. He sold it for $16 million this year. So you can shake your head at this nonsense, but when I go home, running right to the basement to look for my kids' old cards.
I have a binder. I still remember it. I was like 19 or so, and I was just clearing my stuff out. I was moving, and I had a younger friend who was like, "Yeah, I'm still into Pokemon cards," so I just gave it to him.
Oh,
I could be retired right now, Phil.
Oh, you'd actually maybe buy a house once in your life.
Yeah, I know, right? But now I'm here talking to you, and so it goes.
That's sad on both our accounts.
I know, right? No, I wouldn't have it any other way, Phil.
Thanks, Corey.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good weekend.
Same.
That was Phil DeMond with your business news. Well, 6:45 right now here on Information Radio, and next here on the show, as you've been hearing in the news, Albertans will have a chance this fall to decide if they want to vote on staying in Canada. In a pre-recorded speech aired last night, Premier Danielle Smith announced that another question is being added to the October 19th referendum. That question could begin the legal process and hold another binding vote on separation. Smith justified her case by citing an Alberta judge decision that put a stop to a petition calling for a referendum on independence. Here's some of what the Premier had to say.
Last week, an Alberta judge released a decision finding that the citizen initiative petition organized by the group Stay Free Alberta on the issue of Alberta separation is unconstitutional because, in the judge's view, there was not adequate consultation done with the First Nations band about the potential effect of the petition on their treaty rights. This ruling fundamentally misinterprets the nature of the duty to consult, which was never meant to prevent citizens from making their voices heard through a democratic process. Now, I want to be clear. I support Alberta remaining in Canada. That is how I would vote on separation in a provincial referendum. It is also the position of my government and my caucus. However, despite my personal support for remaining in Canada, I am deeply troubled by an erroneous court decision that interferes with the democratic rights of hundreds of thousands of Albertans. Albertans who volunteered, prepared petitions, made their case to fellow citizens, and appear to have secured the required amount of signatures necessary under Alberta law to hold a provincial referendum. The fact is that between the Forever Canada petition requesting a referendum on Alberta remaining in Canada and the Stay Free Alberta petition requesting a referendum on leaving Canada, approximately 700,000 Albertans have signed a petition requesting a vote on this issue. And I, as Premier, will not have a legal mistake by a single judge silence the voices of hundreds of thousands of Albertans. That's not the Alberta way. Alberta's future will be decided by Albertans, not the courts. Our government will therefore be appealing the decision to Alberta's Court of Appeal and, if necessary, the Supreme Court of Canada. But this process will take many months and possibly years before being addressed by those higher courts. In the meantime, under our legal system, this troubling court decision is binding law in Alberta until it is successfully appealed. This means that it is unlikely the courts will permit Elections Alberta to hold a binding provincial referendum on separation until this incorrect ruling is overturned or clarified. But there is another way to hear from Albertans while we wait for our legal appeal to be heard. That is why I'm announcing today that I will be requesting our government add an additional question to the October 19th referendum vote announced previously. The additional question will be, should Alberta remain a province of Canada? Or should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada? Because this proposed referendum question does not directly trigger separation, but if successful, would ask Alberta's government to commence the legal process necessary to hold a binding referendum on the matter, the recent court ruling would not be applicable, and the referendum question I outlined could proceed. This question will also ensure the 700,000 signatories to both the Forever Canada petition and the Stay Free Alberta petition are respected, and the will of Albertans is heard.
That's Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. Now, pro-Alberta sovereignty groups are saying Smith's decision is a half measure and say that the Premier risks losing her political base. We're expected to hear more from her later today, as well as the opposition leader, Naheed Nenshi, will also speak later this morning on the issue.
Manitoba may have a reputation for being cold and flat, but our podcast isn't. I'm Marcy Marcusa, the warmest host on the prairies. Even when my podcast, This is Manitoba, is exploring some challenging issues. I'm never flat when it comes to holding our leaders to account. Some of those interviews have been called spicy. If you care about this province, check out This is Manitoba, with new episodes dropping every Wednesday.
6:50 right now here. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Well, up next here on the show, a new cybersecurity threat called Bad Box is targeting smart devices. Things like lights, thermostats, and cameras can be taken over if they aren't properly secured. And the risk often starts with weak security settings or cheap, unverified products. And most people don't notice anything is wrong until the network has already been compromised. And for a closer look, we've reached David Gerhard. He's head of the Department of Computer Science at the University of Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning, Corey.
So just explain for us, what is this Bad Box botnet in simple terms?
Sure. So a botnet is basically a collection of infected devices across the internet that bad guys can use to do bad things. And so if they have access to a lot of different infected devices, then they can make them all do stuff at the same time, and that would be bad. Or they can make them pretend to be humans looking at ads that can drive ad revenue, or they can make them pretend to bid on auctions, and that can change the price of auctions. So a lot of different kind of fraudulent and other crime type activities that can be done if they have access to a whole bunch of devices that are infected in the same way. And Bad Box, like you said, is a malware that infects these smart home connected devices, particularly Android-based devices, and allows them to be used by the bad guys and to use your internet connection to do these bad things.
So how do these smart devices actually get hacked in the first place?
Yeah, so sometimes the device is not updated properly, right? You forget to do an update or something, and that exposes a vulnerability that then can be exploited by this malware. But the really insidious thing about bad box is that it is, in some cases, actually coming pre-installed on the device before it leaves the factory. Device manufacturers will sometimes use cheap versions of Android that are not certified, because sort of buying a certified version for your product can be expensive to license that. And so these uncertified versions of Android might already have bad box on it, which means the moment you plug it in, it's already starting to do bad things.
Boy, so then how does it spread though from maybe one device to another in your home? Are some homes more vulnerable than others?
Yeah, so this can happen if a device on your network has a vulnerability that is maybe unconnected to the internet. Another device might see that and try to install bad box into it. But the thing about bad box is the whole point is to be connected to the internet, and so any of these devices that connect to the internet, they don't have to piggyback on a different smart device. They can just go straight to the source and be infected directly. As soon as that vulnerability is detected on the internet being what it is, full of bad things. If that protection isn't there, then bad box can go and find that and install itself very, very quickly.
Is there a way to tell if your device has been taken over?
Not typically, and that's sort of the point. This particular malware doesn't target you directly. Like, it's not trying to steal your data. It's not trying to take over your systems. It's not trying to ransom your data back to you or anything like that. All it wants is to be able to sit on top of your internet connection and do bad things from time to time. And the best way to do that is if you don't even notice that it's there. So it'll, connect from time to time. It'll do bad things, but for the most part, the device does what you expect it to do, and then you don't even notice.
And you just mentioned a bit at the top, but what are some of the, just give some more examples of those bad things. I think people might have trouble wrapping their head around what kind of bad things can happen from these bad boxes.
Yeah, so ad fraud is a really huge business, because advertising is sort of what funds the internet today. And if you can make it look like more people are looking at your ad than really are looking at your ad, you can basically steal money from the advertiser, because they pay you based on how many people look at or click on your ad. So that's a big one. That's a big part of what they're doing. The other thing that a big network of bots like this will do is what we call a denial of service attack. This is where a whole bunch of different devices try to do the same thing at the same time, right? They'll try to access one particular service all at the same time, and that service, which expects, a few hundred connections an hour, suddenly has thousands of connections an hour, and it just can't handle all those connections, and so it shuts down as a result. And so this is the kind of mischief and damage that these kind of networks of bots can do.
So then what should people look for when they're maybe buying a smart home product for their house?
Yeah, so the big indicator that there might be a problem, it really is the price. If you're looking at a projector, an internet-connected, Android-enabled projector, for example, that is maybe a couple $100 most of the time, if you find one that's $15, then, hey, I've found a great deal. But that also could mean that this is infected in some way. Right. The brand names are also a thing you can look for, although this is difficult these days because electronics devices have an alphabet soup of different brand names, and it's difficult to sort of track one to the next. But really, a good indicator is on the services, the home connection services like Android or Apple or Amazon that sort of allow these things to talk to each other. Certified devices will be listed somewhere, right? You can go to an Amazon or an Apple website and say, like, these are the devices that we know are going to work well. If the device you're looking at isn't listed there, then it might be worth a second look.
And if someone thinks they have been hacked, what should they do first?
So if this is a larger device or a device you've had for a while that you just forgot to do an update on, and then it was compromised for some reason, you can go to the manufacturer's website and you can find instructions for sort of restoring it to factory settings or reinstalling the software properly. But if it came already compromised from the factory, in many cases, there's not much you can do besides, unplugging it and hitting it with a sledgehammer or something, because really the device isn't worth much. The whole point of it is to get this kind of compromise there. And so because they're so cheap, in some cases, the best thing to do is to just throw it away and maybe look for one that has a better brand name, a better reputation, an actual website, maybe real service.
And what's your message to people who say, like, whatever, right? Like, ad fraud, it affects the companies. It doesn't impact me. So why should I even care if my super cheap product has this on there? Because it's not like they're necessarily spying on me or something like that. Or are they? Like, why should people care?
Yeah, no, this is a really good question, because in some cases you think, like, if I'm not paying for something, then I'm not the product, I'm the customer, or I'm not the customer, I'm the product, and we're sort of getting used to that as a business model. Like I put up with ads when I'm watching my shows, and I put up with service interruptions when it means that I can get something for cheaper. Isn't this just another service interruption that gives me a product for cheap?
Right.
To me, the way to think about this is you wouldn't want to have crime happen in your backyard, right? If criminals could use your house and your backyard to do crime, that would probably be bad. You wouldn't feel comfortable with that. Maybe the police would come to your backyard and ask you why the criminals are doing bad things in your neighborhood. And this is sort of the same thing, right? They're using your internet connection, your IP address, to do these bad things. And so if your internet traffic looks sort of mostly normal, but then once in a while it's used for horrifying things, for crime or any of these like terrible things that they can do, maybe you wouldn't want that to happen. And so there are additional consequences, perhaps even more than just extra internet traffic or a slowdown of your internet speed that you might not be entirely comfortable with.
So it's like the invisible equivalent of like some guy just sitting at your back deck, just hacking the mainframe. You'd be like, can you leave, please?
Yeah, exactly. Sitting on your front porch selling drugs or soliciting minors or doing terrible stuff.
Right. Okay. Well, David, thanks for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
All right. You're very welcome.
David Gerhard is head of the Department of Computer Science at the University of Manitoba. 6:58 now. Let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, a Manitoba MLA is being criticized for saying the farmer who killed Colton Bushy was a victim. Bushy was the 22-year-old Cree man fatally shot by a Saskatchewan farmer in 2016. Tory MLA Josh Ginter made the remark during debate about the right of people to use force to defend their homes. Well, people in a small southwest Manitoba community are celebrating their brand new medical clinic. It was built with $2 million they raised themselves. We'll take you to Glenborough in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather. Well, drive and stop. Does that sound like your commute to work? Well, the city wants to improve traffic woes on one particular Winnipeg street. We're going to talk with the city councillor about that street. We're talking about St. Mary's, and not just making the route smoother, but actually improving traffic there. There's a study going on. We're going to talk about what that study or it might look like and what that councillor wants to see improve. That's coming up this next hour on Information Radio. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. We'll be back after World Report. Stay tuned.
On the current. Please silence your cell phones.
It is enough to drive you crazy, that guy playing a video out loud on the bus or blasting TikTok feeds out of their phone in the park. What is with people not using their headphones, and what can we do to make it stop? It's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Mark Carcasole. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says a question about separation will be added to October's referendum ballot in the province, but it's not a straight independence vote. Instead, Albertans will be asked to choose between staying in Canada or directing the province to start the legal process for a future binding separation vote. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau. Janice, a lot of people looking at this question, trying to figure out what Smith's angle is here. Unpack that for us.
Yeah, in the wake of mounting threats to both her leadership and potentially national unity, the Premier last night seemed to be trying to call the question without actually calling the question. She said recent court decisions finding inadequate consent from First Nations, it makes it impossible to hold a binding referendum on Alberta independence right now. So instead we have this more consultative question, but perhaps an effort to appeal to or appease the independence camp. Danielle Smith also said she'll oppose what the separatists ultimately want.
I support Alberta remaining in Canada. That is how I would vote on separation in a provincial referendum. It is also the position of my government and my caucus.
In the wake of that statement that her caucus is going to campaign to stay in Canada, Separatist leaders last night called for their supporters to start organizing against Smith at the riding level. The wording of this double-barreled question is risky because it opens the door to voters thinking they can vote safely for independence as a protest vote because it's not binding. The only way to really put this to rest is going to be an overwhelming mandate to remain. So we'll see what mobilizes now on that side.
Now, currently, public opinion polls are suggesting the majority of Albertans want to stay in Canada. Nevertheless, how disruptive could a referendum campaign be here?
Well, I took note of the rather muted response last night from Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc, saying federal Liberals take note of the Premier's address but continue to work for a stronger Canada in partnership with Alberta. It suggests they realize that giving separatists a target in Ottawa to shoot at right now could be an entirely unproductive situation. Pierre Poilievre has said he and federal Conservatives will fight on the Remain side in this referendum campaign. That could be divisive among the base of his party because it has deep roots springing from exactly the same feelings of Western alienation that brought us to this vote.
Janice McGregor in our Parliamentary Bureau. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
Some sharp criticism being directed at the Nova Scotia RCMP for its handling of a sexual assault case involving a woman who was later murdered. Susie Butlin was killed by her neighbor in 2017. It's just weeks after her allegations of harassment and assault against him were dismissed by police. After examining the investigation, a federal watchdog agency concludes it was seriously mishandled. CBC's Haley Ryan has that story.
Someone had to fight for her.
For nearly a decade, Suzanne Davis has been pushing for justice for her best friend, Susie Butlin. The 58-year-old woman was at her home on Nova Scotia's North Shore, near Tatamagouche, when her neighbor, Ernie Jr. Duggan, shot and killed her. The same man, she told the RCMP, had sexually assaulted her and been harassing her for weeks.
She was literally stalked and, just not believed.
Police concluded there wasn't enough evidence. On Thursday, the CRCC released a scathing report that found serious issues with how police handled every aspect of Butlin's case. Its 72 findings say there were grounds to lay sex assault charges against Duggan.
Why does this keep happening?
Retired RCMP member Kathy Mansley was the one who filed a complaint to the CRCC in the fall of 2021. She came forward after Davis spoke out about Butlin's case in the aftermath of Nova Scotia's mass shooting in April 2020. Some of the RCMP officers who were involved in the Portapique tragedy were the same officers who ignored Butlin.
I couldn't sleep at night knowing that, this lady should still be alive and with her family and her friends.
The report makes 79 recommendations, including creating specialized units to monitor all sexual assault cases.
This means that Susan Butlin did not die in vain. That is a big one.
RCMP Commissioner Mike Duame says he accepts nearly all of the report's recommendations and says the force has started taking steps to address them. Haley Ryan, CBC News, Halifax.
Uganda is suspending travel to and from the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo due to fears of an escalating Ebola outbreak. The epicenter of the virus in eastern DRC sits right along the border. The restrictions come as the disease continues its rapid spread. Health officials have already tracked more than 750 suspected cases and 177 suspected deaths. Anna Cunningham with more.
Panic at an Ebola treatment centre, filmed by a health worker in the northeastern Congolese town of Rampara. Protesters seen setting fire to tents where Ebola patients were in isolation. It's believed that anger was sparked when hospital staff refused to release the body of a popular soccer player for burial. Even after death, Ebola patients remain infectious. Dr. Abdou Sebushish, a senior health advisor at International Medical Corps, says they are fighting misinformation as well as the deadly virus. Dr. Sebushish says some locals say it's magic killing people. Others don't believe Ebola exists. The echoes of grief resound in the city of Bunia in Ituri province as the body of one Ebola victim is carried away by health workers in protective suits. The M23 rebel group that controls part of the east has now confirmed the first case of Ebola in South Kivu province, far from the epicentre in Ituri. Concerns about just how widespread this virus now is has hit training for the DRC's World Cup team. Its soccer camp in the capital, Kinshasa, now cancelled. Dr. Oliver Johnson from King's College London says this outbreak raises problems since the US pulled out of the World Health Organization under President Donald Trump.
A World Cup in the US is exactly the kind of time the US and the WHO would be joining up. But they're barely on speaking terms anymore.
The WHO is expected to give an update on the scale of this outbreak later today. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
The United Nations Refugee Agency says a Russian missile attack in eastern Ukraine has destroyed $1 million worth of critical aid. The strike hit a warehouse in Dnipro on Wednesday, killing 2 people, wiping out emergency shelters and hygiene kits. Officials say this is the first time a UN facility has been directly hit, and they're warning it's part of a dangerous, growing trend of targeted attacks on humanitarian workers. To Nepal now. That's the hero's welcome given in Kathmandu today for the man they call the Everest Man. 56-year-old veteran guide Kami Rita Sherpa received a rousing reception after scaling the world's tallest peak for a record-breaking 32nd time. Now, despite his historic feat, he is worried. The climber warns the mountain is getting dangerously overcrowded, and he's urging the Nepalese government to step in and tighten up regulations. And finally, after 11 years at the host's desk, Stephen Colbert has said goodbye to his audience. The final episode of The Late Show aired last night, packed with stars and surprise appearances from fellow late-night hosts. The finale marks the end of an era for both Colbert himself and late-night TV. Chris Reyes with more from New York.
Have a good show. Thanks for being here. And let's do it, y'all.
Stephen Colbert opened his final show with the same line he's used for 11 years.
We thought the best way to celebrate what we've done over the last 11 years is just do a regular episode.
Save a few surprises like Paul McCartney as the special guest.
Hey, Steve, what about me?
And a lineup of famous cameos, including Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan, it's great to see you, but I hate to tell you, buddy, you're not my last guest. Ouchie.
The show had all the touches of a regular episode. An interview, skits, and his famous monologue.
We better get off the air quick before a giant stinkhole swallows the Ed Sullivan.
But glaringly absent any mention of the president and the rampant speculation that Colbert's cancellation was the result of his clashes with Donald Trump. There were many subtle jabs, including a joke about CBS's official line that Colbert was canceled simply because it was too expensive. And then a sketch with physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson about how that decision may have created an all-consuming wormhole.
Two contradictory realities cannot coexist without rupturing the space-time continuum. For instance, if a show is #1 on late night, and it also gets canceled.
But just as the show drifted into deeper questions about free speech, democracy, and threats against other late-night hosts, Colbert ended with a simple sign-off.
Good night.
And a gleeful sing-along.
You say goodbye, but I say hello.
Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
I don't know why you say goodbye, say hello.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Mark Carcasole. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Coming up this hour on the show, are you stuck in traffic right now, or maybe you're about to be? Well, good news for people commuting from the city's southeast. The city wants to improve congestion on a busy route. We're going to speak to the councillor of St. Vital coming up to talk about what he wants to see changed. Also this hour on the show, warmer temperatures have kickstarted life in Manitoba's ponds. So CBC's Jim Agapito heads to Fort White Alive to discover what's alive in the water. We're going to get a bit of a biology lesson coming up. But up first here on the show, many Cubans were without power last week, and one Manitoban thinks she can help. She believes solar panels could be the solution to the country's energy crisis. That story coming up first here on Information Radio. Stay tuned. 7:11 right now. Let's check in first with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's premier is calling a Tory MLA's words hateful and divisive after he described the farmer who killed a Cree man 10 years ago in Saskatchewan as a victim. Tory MLA Josh Gunter made the remark during debate about the right of people to use force to defend their homes. An 11-year-old First Nations boy was handcuffed and escorted from a Brandon elementary school after police say he punched his principal and smashed holes in drywall. His dad now wants answers and wants to know why the school didn't call his family before calling police. We'll hear that story coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at your CBC News desk. Abby Adeyemi is in with a look at our beautiful forecast.
Yeah, you step outside now, you definitely notice the warm air mass bringing this blend of sunshine and even some beautiful cloud cover across most of the province. Though we will see some clear conditions as we get into the day, we'll enjoy lots of sunshine transforming to a breezy afternoon while clouds roll in again. Looking at the local picture here in the Red River Valley region this Friday morning, conditions are partly cloudy at some points, but we will see the sun really take hold, holding steady around 11 degrees both at the airport and at the Forks at this time. Temperatures going to be holding steady all morning till we get to a daily high of 21 for today. And across other southern regions, the Pembina Valley region is starting with a mix of sun and clouds. Into the Westman region, similar conditions, but we should see some rain there. The Parkland region and into the Interlake region, all tracking identical setups. Each community reporting temperatures around 11 degrees at this time. Variable cloud cover in most areas, but sunshine will definitely be the big picture for the day. Sheer daytime high of 21 alongside breezy conditions, while up north it's more calm and stable pattern in the region with a mix of sun and clouds. We're seeing 9 degrees around the Power Flim Flan, and we're looking at about let's just say 7 degrees around Tudula Lake, Lean Lake, and even the Gillam area this morning. But Thompson is at 5 degrees. For the city, we're aiming for a high of 21 today under mainly sunny conditions. Current temperatures 11 and sunny at the Fox.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
That's Abby Adeyemi. Sierra, what's going on with the commute?
Not too much, Corey. It's been a pretty lonely morning on the commuter line today. Not hearing about too much going on out there. There's been no calls so far. So to me, it sounds like things are moving along smoothly on your drive. But if that does change and something does pop up, I'd love to hear about it. You can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Sierra. That's Sierra Sanders, your studio director. And before we get to the next item, we do need to issue a correction. Earlier this month, we did a series of stories about youth unemployment. And in those stories, we quoted an Angus Reid report that said youth unemployment was the highest since 1994. So that was actually incorrect. Currently, according to Statistics Canada data, youth employment and participation rates are the worst they've been since the fall of 1998, outside of the pandemic years. Angus Reid says they have updated their report. Well, up next year on the program, Cuba continues to face an ongoing energy crisis. Last week, CBC reported massive blackouts throughout the country, and the situation got worse after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened tariffs on any nation supplying the island with fuel in January. And as the summer heat sets in, majority of cities are without electricity for 20 hours or more each day. And one Manitoban wants to help. Andrea Cry is an engineer and the president of Core Renewable Energy, and she's started a fundraiser to send solar panels to Cuba this month. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us. So just tell us, how would solar panels help Cubans right now?
Well, Cuba is facing an ongoing energy instability crisis. It's impacting them daily through life, healthcare, refrigeration, food security, medicine, education. You can imagine every aspect of life. Energy is the backbone of what we do and their quality of life. So having simple access to reliable power that is localized right at the point of generation can be life-changing. And solar power enables that.
And just give us a sense, can you give us more context on, what it's like there right now in Cuba, based on what you've heard?
Yeah. So with our contacts in Cuba, we hear daily that there are rolling blackouts. Blackouts mean complete power loss. There are brownouts, which kind of come in and out, but it is completely unpredictable. And sometimes the government does issue predictions because they know they have to close the national grid. There has been sort of fluctuations of power coming up with other support coming globally from different people. However, the issue is that we still have a lack of ability to know what's going to happen, and that leads to not accessing food. That's probably the most critical thing I hear about daily, is that there's a lack of food, not because there isn't any food, but because it is difficult to get. The supply chains are difficult. They do rely on a lot of importation, but also just within the country to transport that food from farmers to city or how on, because you don't have fuel to even move vehicles. And then on top of that, there's a lack of fuel to move from cars. If you want to go to school or to work, you can't. People are walking distances like we haven't heard of from the country into the city. Schools are closed. The university is off and on. Right now, I've heard it's been closed, and students are learning supposedly online. But then imagine if you don't have power to be online, how are you learning online, right?
Right.
So it extends to every aspect of life.
And so why is this an issue that you personally wanted to take on?
Well, I do happen to have an expertise in this background. My own PhD is in research of island energy systems resiliency. And so I spent a lot of time in the islands and learning about energy security and building that resiliency. And the scientific evidence and my research shows that this is done through distributed, localized power generation, and renewables provide that, whether it be solar, wind, combined with battery systems for storage to help control the dispersion of that energy. That is how we stabilize the variability of renewables, and storage is a really important part of that. And so when we start to say, well, solar is rather easy to put on. It's not as complicated as putting up a turbine, and it's really easy to put in the hands of the people. And so what I have the skills to do, and both technically, professionally, and through connections globally, is enable that energy to be accessible to people who need it in Cuba. And so this is why I've sat on this. This is not something overnight. This is something that has been on my heart and in my mind for over decades. And so having this period right now that is extremely delicate and vulnerable with our communities in Cuba allows me to say, okay, let's do something about that. And that really motivated me to take the plunge and to do this, this fundraiser.
So you're hoping to raise money. How much are you hoping to raise, and what are you hoping to do precisely with that money?
Okay, so we've got a goal of about $50,000 Canadian, and that would get us our first real movement in this phase of launching this. The panels to people is really what I'm calling it, and this is completely humanitarian. And we are volunteered our skills, our services to be able to do this and to supply the panels at cost as best as possible to get them to the people who need it most. And so with the fundraising, we're hoping to do it in tranches so that we get a chunk of money and we can hit the button on the first phase, hit the manufacturing, hit the next button on the shipment, hit the next button on the import, and kind of go like this, because we know it's long term and we know it's a big ask, and we know everybody is struggling financially in these difficult times. So anything that can be done, we would just be so grateful, because we know of the impact that it makes on the ground.
And so you actually intend to manufacture these solar panels, I guess through your company, I guess?
Yes, we have the capability to do the manufacturing. And so what is so exciting about this is that we've also led the design on a new design for the regions, particularly climate adaptive designs, so that they will be capable to perform in what is now Category 5 plus hurricane zone. So with climate change, we are seeing stronger, more impactful, devastating conditions, especially during hurricane season, which is from June to about November in the Caribbean. We also see that in the typhoons region in the Pacific. So the need for panels that are capable to perform given the extreme conditions that they're under is very critical. And so we want to supply the right kind of technology to the right people in the right place.
And with this $50,000, how many panels could you potentially install, and how many many people could that impact?
Yeah, so we're hoping to at least get over 500 panels roughly there. And that it could be more, it could be less. It all depends on global supply chains. And as you know, it's very volatile right now to ship anything globally. So the prices do change quite almost daily, depending on what is happening around the world. So it does fluctuate, but this gives us flexibility to deploy several rounds.
So 500, would that be like one panel on each roof kind of thing? Or how does that work?
Yeah, well, right now we know that, the type of panels that we're deploying are around about between 450 to 650 watts, depending on what we end up manufacturing. It may be more. What that is able to do, it would definitely help a single family home to supply with a battery system, a small battery system that is their home. It would be able to power their lights, their fridge, and the most fundamental things to keep them secure, maybe charge their mobile phone. So we know that could impact one rooftop, one family for sure. If it needs to be more, there's flexibility to do that as well. It just depends.
Okay, so one panel so that's like one panel per family. Almost.
It could be.
It could be 500 families.
It could
potentially.
be.
Okay, yeah. And like you said, and the price of one of those panels, it's tough to estimate, or what's roughly?
Yeah. So we're doing this at cost. Yeah. So we're really have been able to cut a lot of the costs, the price on this, because this is a humanitarian effort, and so we are just doing this to get the panels to the people to make the impact and the difference. And on top of that, you've got manufacturing costs, you've got shipping costs, you've got import costs. There's so many things that stack up that at the end of the day, with the differences happening around the world, we have not put a final price on that until we know what we're able to fundraise and how much we're able to get for that amount of money at this point in time. So we're really going with the flow on this one.
And I can't help but wonder, why isn't solar energy already a solution in the islands? In particular, like that's more widespread, because obviously it shows how much they still depend on fossil fuels. Right now, we're learning. Why hasn't it been more widely adopted earlier?
I think part of it is policies. There's a part of it that is to deal with how can we actually enable this energy to be deployed reliably, sustainably into different areas. And so a lot of countries, especially in SIDS, which are small island developing states, and least developed countries, DCs, are struggling with that. They're still putting the policies together. They're working. They need the support from the United Nations, from IRENA, from the World Bank, from other aid organizations to help them actually deploy and make a difference. So there's sort of a backlog behind that. There's a need. They are well aware. Their governments are motivated to move this forward. Cuba has just worked on installing a very large solar plant with their partners as well. But what we're trying to do is a little bit different. We're doing this on the human level. Like, how can this impact one family at a time, and then also communities at a time? We're not waiting for governments to make that change. Let's get the panels in the hands of the people so that their lights are on, their food is refrigerated, their medicine is taken care of, and they're safe. That's what our motivation is. But globally, there's huge need on policy, on technology, on partnerships, on funding. Money is a big part of it.
And if people want to take part in this fundraiser, how do they do that?
Yeah. So right now we have a page online under Givergy. It's a fundraising platform at can.givergy.com/empowercuba. And also we have our Global Energy Response Group platform. It's a new platform that we're using to tackle energy instability globally. So Cuba is just one of those projects that we are going to be putting under our envelope under the GERG group. And that is really, you can find that on Instagram as well, Global Energy Response, with the little @ in front of it.
Okay. Well, Andrea, thanks for your time this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Andrea Cry is an engineer and president of Core Renewable Energy. She started a fundraiser to manufacture and send solar panels to Cuba.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
It looks like this is maybe
Thanks so much.
a
Thanks for
one-day blip when farmers across the province need hot and dry.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take.
In general, it's harder to find a job even if you're educated.
From 12:15 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
When I was 5 or 6, my parents gave me seeds and helped me plant them. That was probably close to 70 years ago. And here I am still gardening.
It just brings everyone together. Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you weekdays on CBC.
7:25 right now. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. And it is time for morning sports with Scott Reguer. Good morning.
Hey, Corey.
So just to start here, it was just the start of the Eastern Conference Final the Montreal Canadiens were looking for.
Yeah, although, Corey, it did look like it might not be when Carolina scored a goal in the opening minute. But by the time Habs fans had a chance to even start chewing their fingernails, Cole Caulfield tied it, and they just kept rolling from there. Few would have predicted, Corey, a 6-2 win in the rink of the Eastern Conference's best team, especially against a Hurricanes outfit that swept its first couple of playoff opponents without giving up more than 2 goals in any game. Well, Montreal scored more than 2 in the opening period last night. Habs coach Martin St. Louis says his players did not want to start slowly like they did in their previous series against the Sabres.
The group felt after game 1 in Buffalo that emotionally we weren't where we needed to be. And it's not something that I felt personally because I'm not in the dressing room for that long. I come in, speak to the team, but I'm not in there. So they handled that on their own. And I feel as a coach, you don't need to try to control everything. You have to lean on your group, the leaders and stuff. And they must have done that.
Gotta love a coach, Corey, that believes in his players, especially when they're so youthful. With an average age of 25, the Habs are the youngest team to make it this far in the playoffs in 33 years. The last time, or the team 33 years ago, the Patrick Waugh-led Habs that went and won Canada's last cup. How serendipitous is that?
Wild.
Isn't that wild? So we'll see how they make out. They're in the driver's seat right now, getting that away win. They'll play again tomorrow. Couple of other notes on the rink. Seth Jarvis, Winnipeg native, scored the lone goal for the Canes in the game. And at the World Hockey Championships, a couple of Jets. Mark Scheifele with 3 goals and an assist for Canada. And Gabe Vilardi, he had a goal and an assist as the Canadians beat Norway in overtime. Scheifele had the winner. And Canada moves into first place in its group as a result.
There you go. Jets might be out of the playoffs, but still Manitobans and the Jets are still making an impression. So good to hear.
They are indeed. Yep.
Well, so over to football now, where the Bombers play in Saskatchewan tomorrow. So what will you be watching for?
Yeah, in Saskatoon at Griffith Stadium, where the U of S Huskies usually ply their trade. What will we be watching? Well, this is who we won't be watching. Peyton Thorne, Corey. He's the American quarterback who has elected to leave the Bombers at this point. He was one of 4 quarterbacks looking to serve as Zach Collaros' backup. Mike O'Shea, the coach, says Thorne didn't leave because he had fallen behind any of the other candidates. But apparently he's no longer in the mix. As for those who are, incumbent Terry Wilson, Canadian rookie Taylor Elgersma, as well as the former UFL MVP Bryce Perkins. So I'm sure all 3 will get some reps tomorrow in Saskatoon. As for the game as a whole, Mike O'Shea, he played 16 seasons as a player. He's had 16 more as a coach, and he sounds pretty excited for his young recruits.
Fired up to see these young guys get out there and make plays and see the excitement from their teammates when they do, because they all understand what each guy's been going through, right? They're sitting beside them every day watching these guys grind, and guys are hurting, and they got a couple days left to get their bodies back so they can show us what they can do. And so just that excitement of seeing good football, seeing the interaction between the players.
One of the guys Shea was lauding yesterday from training camp, Major Williams, a DB who had a pick and a touchdown. I'm sure we'll be getting a good look at him tomorrow against the Riders.
All right. And what other sports stories are you watching for as we head into the weekend?
Jays, their pitching's been great of late. They shut out the Yankees yesterday. Basketball, the Knicks have a 2-0 lead over Cleveland in the NBA's Eastern Final. And Christine Sinclair, the soccer great, has a movie coming out. It's actually an animated short, and it's narrated by Ryan Reynolds, a fellow footyphile and Vancouverite. It's called Kind of a Big Deal. I would point you towards CBC's YouTube page with a nice interview there with Christine Sinclair about that book.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Scott. Have a good weekend.
You too.
That is Scott Reguer with your morning sports. Well, still to come here on the show, just beneath the surface of Manitoba's water, new life is blooming. Coming up, we're going to hear from an expert on water creatures and life in ponds. We're going to take you to Fort Wet Alive and do a little bit of critter dipping. That's coming up after your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. It's Friday, and it's beautiful this morning. 12 degrees right now. We're looking at a mostly sunny morning, then increasing clouds late this afternoon with a few showers beginning this evening. It's going to be a little breezy from the southeast, and today's high, a seasonal 21. The family of an 11-year-old First Nations boy handcuffed at a Brandon elementary school is demanding answers. Brandon police were called to Earl Oxford School on Tuesday. A student started upending furniture, smashing through walls, and punching the principal in the face. His mom says he has oppositional defiant disorder, ADHD, autism, and is intellectually developmentally delayed. She says had the school called her earlier, she could have de-escalated the situation.
He probably freaked out, because they don't let him call me. But I thought, I thought maybe they could adapt and just this one time. It's almost the end of the school year. He's been doing so good.
CBC is not naming his mom to protect the child's identity. In a statement to CBC, Brandon School Division says it is committed to creating a safe and secure learning environment, and police are called as a last resort. Manitoba's premier is calling a Tory MLA's words hateful and divisive after he described a farmer who killed a Cree man 10 years ago as a victim. Tory MLA Josh Ginter made the remark during debate about the right of people to use force to defend their homes. He used the example of the Saskatchewan farmer Gerald Stanley. He was acquitted of second-degree murder after shooting 22-year-old Colton Bushy on his farm in 2016. Melinda Mock is the secretary of Indigenous Bar Association. She says she found Ginter's remarks deeply troubling.
Homeowners have a right to defend themselves. These questions, however, and the way it was posed by the MLA is emblematic of larger concerns about systemic racism and unequal treatment that already exist in the justice system.
Ginter did not back off from his remarks, despite being criticized by Premier Wab Kinew and others in the NDP. He says while Bushy's death was a tragedy, he shouldn't have been on Stanley's farm in the first place. As voices calling for Alberta to split from Canada are growing louder, Premier Danielle Smith says the question of separation will be put to a referendum in Alberta this fall.
I will be requesting our government add an additional question to the October 19th referendum vote. Should Alberta remain a province of Canada? Or should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada?
Smith says she would vote for Alberta to remain in Canada. This comes more than a week after a petition calling for a vote was struck down in the courts. Opinion polls suggest the vast majority of Albertans oppose separating from Canada. The United Nations Refugee Agency says a Russian missile attack in eastern Ukraine has destroyed $1 million worth of critical aid. The strike hit a warehouse in Dnipro Wednesday, killing 2 people, wiping out emergency shelters and hygiene kits. Officials say it is the first time a UN facility has been directly hit. They warn it is part of a dangerous, growing trend of targeted attacks on humanitarian workers. Uganda is suspending travel to and from the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo over fears of an escalating Ebola outbreak. The epicenter of the virus in eastern DRC sits right along the border. The restrictions come as the disease continues its rapid spread. Health officials have already tracked more than 750 suspected Ebola cases and 177 suspected deaths. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. People in a small southwest Manitoba community are celebrating their brand new medical clinic. It was built with $2 million they raised themselves. Sandy Armstrong is one of many who donated to the new Spirit Sands Medical Clinic in Glenborough. She says the community deserves a proper medical facility.
It has definitely done its time. I was almost ready to buy them a new stool for the one office the first time I seen it, but this new clinic is going to be just fantastic. I'm very proud of Glenborough and all the volunteers that are in this town.
Glenborough's current clinic is more than 70 years old. It's in the hospital basement. The new clinic is expected to open in June, and the official ribbon-cutting ceremony is slated for summer. You can find the latest news updated through the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at your CBC News Desk. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa, and Abby Adiemi is in with a look at your regional forecast.
Yes, Corey, good morning. A pleasant spring day ahead for most of the regions today. Mild conditions down south, plenty of sunshine being spotted in the northern parts of the province. And if you are in the Parkland region, we woke up to foggy conditions. Now this is like transitioning to more like misty conditions. So you might be noticing reduced visibility. And this is that time of the year wildlife will be making its way across the road. So yes, there's going to be fog present. Also look out for wildlife, especially the deers. They're going to be crossing at this time of the year. So look out for that. But for the Red River Valley at this time, forecast brings a mainly sunny day with increasing cloudiness late into the afternoon. You'd notice the wind pick up from the southeast. Morning temperatures really going to be hovering around the 11-10 degrees that we are seeing at this time. And then we'll see that transition to cloudy conditions. Our daily high for today would get to 21, and then expect a few showers tonight as we cool to about 9 degrees. Then that would clear into Saturday morning, where we only get to 17 tomorrow. Across the southern regions, in the Pembina Valley region, Morden is at 10 degrees. We're seeing mixed conditions there, a mix of sun and clouds. We're going to see late clouds roll in later. High will be around 21, similar to Winnipeg. Then we head west. Brandon sitting at 7, mostly cloudy conditions we do have there. We have a slim chance of showers in the afternoon and thunderstorms, and of course a high of 18 degrees in the Westman region. Now towards the Parkland, Dauphin is sitting at 9 degrees with those misty conditions I mentioned earlier, which will be impacting visibility. So take it easy if you're on the highway. We're expecting afternoon thunderstorms in that part of the province as well. We only see a high of 16 in the Parkland region. Then we track it into the Interlake region. Gimli is at 7, enjoying some mainly sunny conditions at this time. Later in the day, we'll notice the clouds roll in. Expect your daily high to warm to about 20 degrees. Now into the central part of the province, talking about the part of Flin Flon, Norway House. We're looking at a mostly cloudy conditions at this time, between 7 and 4 degrees. There's a slim chance of afternoon showers, and the forecast highs will be around 18. That's for the part of Flin Flon. And Norway House, you do warm up to about 17 later. Current temperature around 5 degrees. Thompson is mainly at 5, warming to 19. Nin Lake is sunny at 8, warming to 19 as well. Tadula Lake and Gillam, we're seeing 7 degrees there. You only get to 17 degrees later. Then for the Churchill region, we're seeing partly cloudy conditions and mild winds. Current temperatures, we're looking at about 5 degrees there. You warm up to 9 today. So enjoy this widespread sunshine in the northern part of the province. And for the southern regions, yes, we're seeing the cloudy conditions, but it will be turning sunny as you get into the morning. Then the clouds are rolling at some point. You'll notice the winds, and it's still going to be sunny. I'll just say enjoy the sunshine today. Current temperatures hovering around 12 degrees. We get to 21 later.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Sierra, what's happening with the commute?
Yeah, I have actually gotten a couple calls, so thank you to the folks who have called. I got a call from Mike, and we heard Abby mention this in his weather, that there is some widespread fog out west, in the west of the province, and so Mike was driving on the number 5 from Dauphin to Yorkton, and he did mention that there was very bad fog, and he could only really see a few feet in front of him. So something to keep in mind there. We heard it first from a driver there. So if you're in that area, keep that in mind as you're driving, that fog is pretty thick, or it's thick enough that you can really only see a couple feet in front of you. So adjust your driving if needed there, and your speed possibly too. As well, I got a call from Emerson, about 20 minutes ago now. She mentioned that southbound Henderson, just before Disraeli, kind of starting around Monroe there, it was a lot slower than normal. And I did some digging, and it looks like there might be a collision in that area. Of course, I don't have exact details, so I'm calling out to folks if you're driving in that area, and you can give me a call to give me some details. I would really, really appreciate that. So yeah, southbound Henderson before Disraeli, kind of starting around Monroe there, it does start to slow down, and it might be due to a collision. But if you have some information on that, I would love to hear from you. So give me a call on the CBC commuter line. Just be like Emerson and Mike, and give me a call. That number is 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Sierra. Speaking of long commutes, just shout out to the roughly 500 people or so who are going to be running on foot foot through the rugged trails of the Whiteshell this weekend. The Sephiron Centennial is happening, and there's lots of people running. Some people are running 8K, 25K, 50K. There's about 123 people, get this, registered to run 100 kilometers through the woods of the Whiteshell, that rugged shield. So shout out to everyone. I was actually supposed to pace a friend, but my knee had other plans. But you'll see me out there. If you are going to be running out there, I'll be out there on the trails cheering folks on tomorrow. So good luck to everyone who's going to be running really, really far, and it looks like actually pretty good running conditions overall in the Whiteshell. About low teens and overcast, which is almost ideal running temperatures for this time of year. So shout out to folks running Sephiron Centennial tomorrow. Well, next up here on the show, as mentioned, spring has taken its time getting here this year. But while we humans have been grumbling about the cold temperatures above ground, a world of creatures underwater are living their best little lives. And CBC's Jim Agapito headed to Fort White Alive to discover a hidden world blooming under our local wetlands.
Spring in Manitoba isn't just happening above ground. Life is emerging underwater as the weather warms up. We're at Fort White Alive with Education Manager Katrina Fraze to discover the busy world that's emerging underneath the surface. Okay, Katrina, you're about to scoop a sample here. Can you describe what you're about to do?
Yeah, for sure. So I just have a simple aquarium net that you could get at a pet store, and I've got an old container recycling. It's great. So I'm just gonna take my net and I'm gonna go into the water and I'm just gonna do some figure eights with the net so things don't swim out, and we'll see what we get in here. So I just tipped my net over and I dipped it in the water because water's really sticky. So all of those critters would have been stuck to my net. If I dip it in there, I'll be able to let them swim out.
Oh, wow. So what changes happen in the pond once the ice melts in the spring?
Well, even if there's still ice on the pond, there will be things starting to move. There's all kinds of very, very small creatures that wake up as the ice is melting, and they start to grow, they start to reproduce. And as you watch the pond over time, things get bigger and bigger and more diverse. So there's more different kinds of living things the longer you watch. What we start with in the early spring would be really small invertebrates. You might know them as plankton. We've got the copepods, which are the smallest ones in the bucket right now. Water fleas, also quite small. We got our side swimmer, which is like a type of freshwater shrimp, just cruising around down there. And then the water mites are also fairly small. They actually have 8 legs, and they have a really round body. And then I'm still seeing our leech as well in there. And then if I flip to the other side, I've got some insects that we've got. So the ones that were gathering their air bubbles at the surface and heading back down underwater are our pygmy back swimmers. And I think I saw a mosquito larva in there as well. There's a caddisfly. Oh, my favorite one. This little tiny line that's moving every so often. There's 2 of them in here.
Okay.
It looks like a dash line that's moving. It's actually a tube made out of plants that's being pulled along by a little caterpillar-like creature that's using its legs to swim.
For kids and adults visiting Fort White Alive, what's the reaction like when they first scoop something alive out of the water?
There's always excitement. It doesn't matter the age of the person. If they catch something in a net and see it in a container, they'll be excited about it. So we remind them that they need to sit or kneel when they're looking for things in the water, so we don't have someone go in the water. But yeah, everyone is just kind of wowed and amazed, especially if we can get something underneath a microscope where you can look at it up close.
Why are ponds such an important part of the ecosystem in Manitoba?
Well, they're shallow water, so that allows a lot of sunlight in, which means a lot of plants can grow. And plants are, of course, the bottom of the ecosystem, and they produce oxygen. So that's really important. The other thing about ponds is that the water doesn't move very quickly through the pond. So if water comes in and it's full of dirt, sediment, things like that, it settles out when it gets into the pond. And that allows the water then to be cleaner when it leaves. I would say just the amount of life, biodiversity that depends on the ponds in Manitoba is it's really significant. So lots of different kinds of birds, wildlife, amphibians like frogs, turtles. So they're really a very important place for growing all kinds of life.
What should Manitobans pay more attention to the next time they walk past a pond or wetland?
I would say just take a minute to stop and open up your ears and listen, because throughout the spring, throughout the summer, there will be different cycles of life in the pond, and they all make different sounds. I would say right now most of the things that we're scooping are pretty small. I would expect tadpoles. There are probably some tadpoles in ponds already. Wood frog tadpoles are the kind of larger black ones that you'll start to see. I'd look for turtles starting to pull themselves out of the water and warm up on the shorelines. And then as time goes by, we'll start to see dragonflies flying around, laying eggs, and underwater we'll see the larvae or the little dragonflies starting to get bigger. All of these living things have a life cycle, and many of them it takes multiple weeks to months for them to go through their life cycle. Some creatures, they go through their life cycle within a week, so it really depends on what we're looking at. But we'll see change all the time, and it's an exciting time of year.
That was CBC's Jim Agapito at Fort White Alive in Winnipeg. And next week, we're going to check in again with the center's education manager, Katrina Fraze, on our pond sample to see what new life is emerging as spring continues. Love a good critter dip. Well, 7:46 right now, and with the weather warming up, you might be switching from your warm brew to cold brew. It's cold brew season, so to celebrate, we've got some music here from Brandon's Mitchell McCoons. Here he is now with Cold Coffee on CBC Radio 1.
I don't like cold coffee too much. Only drink it when I'm angry or I'm sad. Come to think of it, I love it more than I thought I'd had. Think I like cold coffee too much. Can't get through without my friends. It reminded me that today's not the end. Everybody has those days and they show it in different ways. Can't get through without my friends. When it rains, we'll retreat into our little log cabin. When it snows, we'll put another log on the fire. Burning desire, that's you and I. Our little apartment. When it snows, we won't have a walkway to plow. Here and now, that's you and I. Our little country home. When it snows, we'll be the ones to plow the drive out all night. That's you and I.
From Brandon, that's Mitchell McCoons with Cold coffee. Well, next up here on the show, St. Mary's Road is an ongoing headache for some drivers, and the route is often congested during the morning and afternoon commutes. We get a lot of calls on the commuter line about it. And the city of Winnipeg wants to change that. So they're commissioning a study to improve traffic on that busy thoroughfare. And St. Vital Councillor Brian Mays has been wanting that change for 14 years, and he joins us now to talk about it. Good morning.
Good morning.
So can you just describe what traffic looks like on St. Mary's right now during busy times? I'm sure commuters know, but maybe if some people are from the north end, they might not realize.
Yeah, and the study is a particular section at the north end of my ward running from St. Anne's up to Taché, which gets into Councillor Allard's ward. I was on 2019, the description was poor traffic and heavy congestion even outside of peak hours. And this study talks about congestion and extreme travel time unreliability. So, yeah, that stretch is congested and extremely unreliable. So, hence the study.
And what is it that makes that stretch so congested and unreliable?
The narrowing. It goes from roughly 6 lanes, 3 lanes each way. Well, St. Anne's and St. Mary's each have 2 lanes. They merge for a while. You've got 3 going north, and then near Woodcock Cycle, it goes down to 2, and it's a bottleneck, bluntly, until it expands out again.
Right. And do you get an earful from constituents about it?
Yeah, both on safety concerns, because there have been a couple of really god-awful accidents there over the last 4 years, but also just the slowness and the unreliability of it. So when I first got elected in 2011, a month earlier, this was going to be part of a big a widening project in 2021. That never came to pass, and Councillor Allard and I both have said, look, we don't have the money to widen it, but can we do something? Can we do a study? Can we get some traffic flow improvements?
So I understand there's a few solutions in mind. So what are the possible options to make traffic better on the street?
Yeah, and I'd wanted to take more of a look at cycling options here. Staff not so keen on that, but the staff are keen on looking at what they're calling a reverse lane, a lane that would go northbound in the morning, southbound for the afternoon rush hour. That would be amazing if we could get that, possibly widening a little bit to create the 5th lane, maybe down the middle, maybe for transit. There's certainly some transit cutaways you could do. That was a 2005 study, so I'd even settle for that. I'd settle for where we were in 2005. So, yeah, certainly a number of ideas to make it better.
And in terms of your favorite ideas, you talked a little bit about cycling, you talked a little bit about the reverse. Are you in favor of any particular that you'd push for?
Yeah, certainly some of the transit cutaway, like create a 3rd lane for a bit so the bus can pull in and get out of traffic. The sidewalks, I've always thought, could be widened a bit and create a better cycling environment. I'm not the great champion of that. Councillor Allard has been, to his credit, but and most of this work would be in Councillor Allard's ward, but he's been very good to work with on this. So hopefully we do something. We'll do the study, and if we could get this reverse lane, that would be huge.
And so if the study's yet to happen, is there any thought on what cost could look like for something like that at this point?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I mean, we've been going out of our way to say, look, this isn't like a full-on widening. We don't have tens of millions of dollars here, so we don't have any money other than the study money. But I think you could do some fairly simple stuff for transit, for cycling, and the reverse lane. There's a engineer named David Patman with the city who's been looking into this, and I mean, that would be amazing if we could get that.
And you said there might be a little bit of widening. As soon as you hear that, you think, is expropriation potentially something that could be a possibility in that area?
Well, we don't have the money for it, but yeah, there's certainly angles to it, like where some of the accidents have been. You could smooth out some of the curbs. There's a thing now where the bus stops and then lurches to its left to get back into traffic and then makes a right onto Carrier, like a block later. Well, could you shave away some of the sidewalk there? Could you change the angle of the road a little bit it's very inefficient. The bus has to pull in and then make an immediate right. So could you do something with that?
So if there were expropriations, it would be, there's a possibility that there might be something? Or no?
Well, years ago when we looked at this, the plan was to expropriate Woodcock Cycle and Greg Sellinger's constituency office, and I just thought, this is dead in the water. This is dead on arrival. We're not doing that. So, and Councillor Allard, to his credit, has said, I don't want Henderson Highway outside of Nelson Mac Collegiate. So I don't want to get off on the probably not expropriating, but if we could there are some medians you could take out in certain places, or some boulevards. So, yeah, I think we can do something here.
So if money in politics weren't a factor,
well, we don't have the constituency office to worry about anymore. But,
right.
Yeah, it's been a battle to get this up and running, and no faulting of the mayor who's actually backed this project, but we'll see where we go from here.
So, like you said, there's been efforts to make changes that section of St. Mary's Road for a long time now, but they've fallen flat. What's been the roadblocks?
Politics and money, I suppose. I mean, it hasn't been as top priority, and I mean, the mayor didn't run on this. He talked about Kenaston and Chief Peguis. I voted for Peguis widening. So this isn't a big widening that we don't have the money to do it, but it's given all the density we've approved along St. Mary's Road and the areas further south, Sage Creek, Bonavista, feeding up. It just seems we've got a huge traffic volume there and extreme unreliability, as the study says. So I think it's time to do something.
And how much of an election issue do you think this will be in your ward?
It's something people have asked about for a long time, and I don't know if I'm running again, but I would hate to leave with a feeling I'd done nothing on it. So I'm very proud we've gotten something up and running here, and a bit of praise for Councillor Allard, who's always said, well, most of the work's going to be in my ward, and it'll benefit you and Councillor Chambers further south. True, so it's been cooperation about, okay, if it's not widening, then let's look at some other options, cycling, transit, the reverse lane. So we'll hopefully get the study done and then get some real work.
And you say you don't know if you're running again.
I do not.
Okay, but if you do, is this you're going to make this part of your platform?
Oh yeah, no, this would be a big. I'm quite proud that we finally got this through. It took a lot of years, and when you arrive in 2011 and you see this, hey, this is to be done by 2021. This is great, and then the years go by, and we don't do all these projects, of course, but you realize somebody's got to fight for this. So I'm pleased I've got the money for the fund. That took some work, but yeah, hopefully we'll get some work done. If I'm not in office, at least maybe in the next term of office.
Well, what's the hesitancy to run or not, if I can ask?
It's been a good run. It's been 14 plus years. I guess my relation with the mayor perhaps isn't all it could be, and I certainly was a fine colleague as a councillor. That went very well. And I guess I'll have to figure out what I want to do over the next few years.
Okay. Well, and before we let you go, I'm sure there's more we could dig into. We only got a couple minutes left here. When will the results of the study be known? Do we know anything of that?
I don't think we do know that yet. I mean, it's approved in 24. The money was set aside in 25. So yeah, let's get going. Has been my view. Let's get this up and running. Some staff hesitancy, but. I think Mr. Patman has been very good to work with from our civil service, and I'm sure he can steer this thing and hopefully get some results.
So best guess then, when can drivers hope to see some improvements in traffic on St. Mary's Road?
That is a guess. I would be surprised if we haven't done something by 2028.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it there. Councillor Mays, thanks for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. Much appreciated.
Brian Mays is the councillor for St. Vital. 7:58 right now. Let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. An 11-year-old First Nations boy was handcuffed and escorted from a Brandon elementary school this week after police say he punched his principal and smashed holes in the drywall. His dad now wants answers. He says his son has oppositional defiant disorder as well as ADHD, autism, and is intellectually developmentally delayed. We'll hear what happened there coming up. And a Manitoba MLA is being criticized for saying the farmer who killed Colton Bushy was a victim. Bushy was the 22-year-old Cree man who was fatally shot by a Saskatchewan farmer in 2016. That story and more coming up at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at your CBC News desk. Stay tuned. We got some magic coming up. 2 young magicians are joining us on the show. They might do a trick for us and talk about why they love magic and why they even managed to win a competition. That's coming up on Information Radio. Stay tuned.
On cue. The writer and director Boots Riley doesn't just make films to entertain. He hopes they'll inspire you to start a movement. Boots will be here to talk about why he's hoping his new movie about a crew of shoplifters who dismantle the fashion industry might just inspire you to start a revolution.
What we need is a mass, militant, radical labor movement.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current. with Matt Galloway.
It is enough to drive you crazy, that guy playing a video out loud on the bus or blasting TikTok feeds out of their phone in the park. What is with people not using their headphones, and what can we do to make it stop? It's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Mark Carcassole. Alberta's premier is putting national unity front and center. In a televised speech last night, Danielle Smith announced there will be a question about separatism on the referendum ballot this fall, but it's not a direct vote on leaving Canada. Instead, it's a vote on whether to hold a future binding referendum on separation. The move allows Smith to bypass a recent court decision that threw out a separation petition. Julia Wong has more on that story for us.
I wish to speak with you about the debate we're having in this province on the future of Alberta and Canada.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith announcing Thursday night in a provincial address there will be a question about separatism on October's referendum ballot, but some might find it's not so straightforward. Should Alberta remain in Canada, or should the province hold a binding referendum on whether or not it should separate?
It's time to have a vote, understand the will of Albertans on this subject, and move on.
Premier is putting us through a very long and divisive process.
Thomas Lukasik, the man behind the pro-Confederation Forever Canada petition, is frustrated.
First, we're going to hold a referendum if we want to have a referendum, and then if we decide to have a referendum, then we will have to hold another referendum. And if that doesn't confuse anybody, I don't blame you. That's not what leadership is all about.
Also upset with the Premier, Treaty 6 Grand Chief Joey Pete.
Total disregard to First Nations. No respect whatsoever to treaty. Even this duty to consult, they didn't consult us regarding anything.
Those fighting for independence are not thrilled either. Jeffrey Rath, a lawyer for Stay Free Alberta, posted on social media the Premier is dealing a referendum question from the bottom of the deck, suggesting the Albertans who signed the separatism petition are being ignored. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
From a televised address to the agency that controls the airwaves, online streaming giants say a new CRTC requirement is discriminatory against them. The national broadcasting regulator is forcing services like Disney Plus and Amazon Prime to pay 15% of their Canadian revenue toward Canadian and Indigenous content. The companies argue domestic broadcasters do not face the same level of burden. Rafi Bouchikanian has that story.
We're applying Canadian law in Canada.
Scott Shortlift says the CRTC is just doing its job. He's a vice president with the regulator.
We're trying to establish paths where streaming services will see this as an investment in great content.
The Liberals under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau passed the Online Streaming Act 3 years ago, meant to level the playing field between industry giants like Netflix or Disney Plus and Canadian television broadcasters. The CRTC initially implemented it by making streamers kick 5% of their revenues toward Canadian and Indigenous content. It's now raising that to 15%, while the companies are already in court with Ottawa over the smaller amount.
It seems almost certain to lead to years more of legal battles or trade battles.
Michael Geist teaches digital policy at the University of Ottawa. He says there's another likely consequence.
We may well see increased prices for Canadian consumers as the cost of doing business just went up significantly.
For now, an industry association representing the American companies says they're disadvantaged, being made to subsidize and promote Canadian content over their own productions, while Canadian broadcasters do not face such obligations. There's also pending U.S. legislation as Republicans want to investigate whether the Streaming Act violates trade between the two countries. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, Ottawa.
In Nova Scotia, the RCMP is facing severe criticism for its handling of a sexual assault case involving a woman who was later murdered. Susie Butlin was killed by her neighbor in 2017, just weeks after police dismissed her allegations against him of harassment and assault. A federal watchdog agency, the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission, reviewed the case and concludes the investigation was seriously mishandled. The CBC's Haley Ryan reports.
Someone had to fight for her.
For nearly a decade, Suzanne Davis has been pushing for justice for her best friend, Susie Butlin. The 58-year-old woman was at her home on Nova Scotia's North Shore, near Tattamagush, when her neighbor, Ernie Jr. Duggan, shot and killed her. The same man, she told the RCMP, had sexually assaulted her and been harassing her for weeks.
She was literally stalked and, just not believed.
Police concluded there wasn't enough evidence. On Thursday, the CRCC released a scathing report that found serious issues with how police handled every aspect of Butlin's case. Its 72 findings say there were grounds to lay sex assault charges against Duggan.
Like, why does this keep happening?
Retired RCMP member Kathy Mansley was the one who filed a complaint to the CRCC in the fall of 2021. She came forward after Davis spoke out about Butlin's case in the aftermath of Nova Scotia's mass shooting in April 2020. Some of the RCMP officers who were involved in the Portapique tragedy were the same officers who ignored Butlin.
I couldn't sleep at night knowing that, this lady should still be alive and with her family and her friends.
The report makes 79 recommendations, including creating specialized units to monitor all sexual assault cases.
This means that Susan Butlin did not die in vain. That is a big one.
RCMP Commissioner Mike Duame says he accepts nearly all of the report's recommendations and says the force has started taking steps to address them. Haley Ryan, CBC News, Halifax.
The Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo is getting worse. In its latest update, the World Health Organization says there are now nearly 750 suspected cases and more than 175 suspected deaths linked to the disease. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says dealing with the outbreak is highly challenging, and he warns that regional violence and insecurity are only impeding the response of health workers on the ground.
There is also significant distrust of outside authorities among the local population. Just yesterday, there was a security incident at a hospital in Ituri where tents and medical supplies were set on fire. Building trust in the affected communities is critical to a successful response and is one of our highest priorities.
In response to the latest numbers, the WHO has raised its risk assessment for Ebola to very high at the national and regional levels. However, the organization continues to stress that the global risk to other countries is still low. The United Nations Refugee Agency says a Russian missile attack in eastern Ukraine has destroyed $1 million worth of critical aid. The strike hit a warehouse in Dnipro on Wednesday, killing 2 people, wiping out emergency shelters and hygiene kits. Officials say it is the first time a UN facility has been directly hit, and they warn that this is all part of a dangerous, growing trend of targeted attacks on humanitarian workers. And finally, after 11 years at the host's desk, Stephen Colbert has said goodbye to his audience. The final episode of The Late Show aired last night, packed with stars and surprise appearances from fellow late-night hosts. The finale marks the end of an era for both Colbert and late-night television. The Late Show, previously hosted by David Letterman, was on the air for 33 years. Chris Reyes has more from New York.
Have a good show. Thanks for being here. And let's do it, y'all.
Stephen Colbert opened his final show with the same line he's used for 11 years.
We thought the best way to celebrate what we've done over the last 11 years is just do a regular episode.
Save a few surprises like Paul McCartney as the special guest.
Hey, Steve, what about me?
And a lineup of famous cameos, including Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan, it's great to see you, but I hate to tell you, buddy, you're not my last guest. Ouchie.
The show had all the touches of a regular episode. An interview, skits, and his famous monologue.
We better get off the air quick before a giant stinkhole swallows the Ed Sullivan.
But glaringly absent any mention of the president and the rampant speculation that Colbert's cancellation was the result of his clashes with Donald Trump. There were many subtle jabs, including a joke about CBS's official line that Colbert was canceled simply because it was too expensive. And then a sketch with physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson about how that decision may have created an all-consuming wormhole.
Two contradictory realities cannot coexist without rupturing the space-time continuum. For instance, if a show is #1 on late night and it also gets canceled.
But just as the show drifted into deeper questions about free speech, democracy, and threats against other late-night hosts, Colbert ended with a simple sign-off.
Good night.
And a gleeful sing-along.
You say goodbye, but I say hello.
Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
I don't know why you say goodbye, I say hello.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For all the news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. Hey, if you're enjoying the World Report podcast, please, by all means, follow us, tell a friend. It helps us spread the word. I'm Mark Carcasole. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Well, your Friday is about to get a bit more magical. We're joined by two magicians who are keeping it all in the family. A 12-year-old and his younger brother will be here to tell us what magic means to their family and perform a bit of a trick for us as well. That's coming up first here this half hour. Also, more than $2 million is being spent on downtown safety initiatives in Winnipeg. Ahead on Information Radio, how will this money make the city's core more safe? The Downtown Biz and the Downtown Community Safety Partnership are getting the bulk of that money. So their leaders are joining us here in studio to talk about how they plan to spend it. That's coming up right here on Information Radio. Stay tuned. Right now at 8:11, let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's premier is calling a Tory MLA's words hateful and divisive after he described the farmer who killed a Cree man 10 years ago as a victim. Tory MLA Josh Ginter made that remark during debate about the right of people to use force to defend their homes. We'll hear what went down there. And people in a small southwest Manitoba town are celebrating their brand new medical clinic. It was built with $2 million they raised themselves. Sandy Armstrong, one of the many who donated to this new clinic, it's in Spirit Sands. It's called Spirit Sands Medical Clinic in Gleborough. She says their old clinic was 70 years old in the basement of a hospital. She looks forward to this brand new facility. That's coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells at your CBC News desk. Abby Adiyemi, what's going on with the weather?
The province is enjoying mild conditions developing down south and plenty of sunshine present in the north. Though we have a touch of morning mist in the Dauphin area, keeping visibility low for early commuters. So take that into consideration. But here in Winnipeg, it's 12. We'll warm up to sunny 21 later.
Thank you very much, Abby. Sierra Sanders, what's going on with the commute?
Yeah, still hearing about the big backup on southbound Henderson due to a collision there. Got a call from Terry. He called first, said he had barely moved after he had left his house. He called me back again to give me an update there. And it looks like the collision is happening around southbound Henderson at Winterton in that area. And he says to expect at least a 40-minute delay. So it is very, very backed up, moving very slow. There's also construction going on there too, so it does look to be very slow this morning. So keep that in mind. It looks like there is a tow truck on scene looking to clear things up. There were emergency vehicles on scene, so hopefully that will be resolved soon. But something to keep in mind here as if you're making your way out the door here very soon in that area. 204-788-3093 is the number to call if something's getting in your way.
Well, let's bring some magic to your Friday morning, shall we? Earlier this month, the 37th annual Young Magicians of Manitoba Showcase of Magic was held, and that's where 12-year-old Asher Kettner took home the senior division crown. But he isn't the only magician in the family. His dad, Jacob, and his younger brother, Ben, are also magicians, and they're both part of the Young Magicians of Manitoba. So Asher and Ben now join us over Zoom. Good morning to you both, fellas.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for joining us. So let's just start with you, Asher. So you competed in the Young Magicians Showcase. You won your division earlier this month. What? Just tell us what a magic competition looks like.
Well, it's kind of just like any other competition, like any sport competition. You go up in front of an audience, and there's a few judges hidden around the audience, and you do a trick for them, and there's maybe 10 people who do the trick, and then the judges score on how well you did, if you accidentally flashed anything, and then yeah.
Wow. And what was it like when you found out you won?
It was very very surprising. I didn't expect to win, and it was very very fun. Like it really felt good, and yeah.
And Asher, what do you love about doing magic? Well, I know your dad did it, and he must have taught you to some degree. But what keeps you doing it? What do you love about doing it?
I just like keeping people on their toes. You know, really like doing stuff that they couldn't possibly imagine. You know, just like just blowing them away, like doing stuff that shouldn't be possible.
And what's that feeling like when those people get the look on their face? They're like, "What? No way!"
It makes me feel like that I can do something special, kind of, that like, because not many people do magic. So like, when you do find someone who does do magic, it's cool, and it's rare, and it's fun to be one of those people, you know?
Yeah, sure thing. And Ben, you also do magic. You're sitting beside someone who happens to do magic as well. Ben, so tell us, what about you? What do you love about doing magic?
It's just really great. It's really fun to go up on the big stage and perform to a bunch of people and like make their faces light up and like just like make them surprised and be like, it's just kind of gives you a good feeling.
Mm-hmm. And how much like practice goes into it though? Like it must be a lot of dedication, eh?
Yeah, we usually practice like once after school, and then once like later in the night.
And what does that look like? Are you like I can't imagine like you flipping cards back and forth, or is like you're kind of practicing tricks on each other kind of thing?
Well, I mean, we just pretend that we just pretend that we are at the show and we're performing the trick to the whole audience, even though we're not. But we just kind of pretend like that so that we're ready to actually perform to the whole audience.
So you try to trick each other ever, Asher and Ben? Like, are you kind of like, "Ooh, I'm going to get you with this one"?
Yeah, we normally like look up some tricks, and then we like come to each other and we're like, "Hey, can I like try this trick on you?" And then the other one asks like, "Oh, how did you do it?" And it's nice that we're like both magicians and that we can share our magic and learn from each other, kind of. Yeah, and it's like, and we really try to fool our dad because like it's really hard for us to fool him. So like when we get a trick that he doesn't know how to do, it's like exciting.
So you've done it before. You've managed to trick your dad. Well, what did that feel like?
Yeah. It felt like that we weren't really the like low students anymore, and that we were on like the same level, because he's a really good magician. But once you do something that even he can't understand, it's like it's just like fun to trick him after years of him tricking us, you know.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, you always, I guess, compete in magic. Do you ever compete against each other? Is there like a friendly or even maybe not friendly brotherly competition in the house?
I mean, we're in different groups. Asher's in the senior group, and I'm in the junior group, so we're not in the same group. There was this one time that we both brought home trophies because we're in different groups.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like for the seniors group, there's like a whole competition just for the seniors,
Gotcha.
and then a whole competition just for the juniors.
Okay. But even around the house, do you guys try to trick have you guys like ever like you trying to trick each other a lot? Sounds like though, hey?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, that's cool. Well, I actually understand you guys have a trick to show us. So let's see if you can trick me. We have some time. So what kind of trick do you got for us?
Well, I have the ambitious card trick.
Okay.
And do you want me to just like start it?
Yeah. So you're sitting at your coffee table here. You've got a deck of cards. So just get the trick going. Let's see what you got.
Okay. So first, I'm gonna need you to tell me when to stop. I'm just gonna riffle through the cards, and I need you to tell me when to stop.
Okay. Stop.
Right here?
Yeah, right there.
Okay, this is the card that you chose.
Okay.
And you chose the Ace of Spades.
Yeah, that is the ace of spades. Yeah, it is. That's right.
Now, I need you to think of any shape. Just like think of a shape that comes to mind.
Do I say it out loud?
Yes.
Okay, I'm thinking of a triangle.
Okay, now I'm just going to draw a triangle on this card
Okay.
so that we know that this is your card. It has a little triangle on it.
Yep.
Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to take the card and I'm just going to shove it into the middle of the deck, just like that.
Okay.
But then when I snap my fingers, it comes back to the top.
Wait, how do you do that? But it was in the deck. And now you just pulled it off the top.
Mm-hmm.
But that was wild.
It was magic.
You're right. You legitimately tricked me. How much practice did it take to pull something like that off? That was amazing.
Yeah, it took like a few days to master that. But there's even a little more to it.
Okay, yeah, what's the next part?
Because then if I take that card and then put it back into the middle.
Yeah, it's right in there in the middle.
And then snap my fingers again, it comes back to the top.
Oh, come on. No way. That doesn't make any sense. How did you do that? That is wild. Asher, that is incredible. My mind is boggled. I'm trying to figure out how you pulled it off, and there it is. That's amazing. Asher, you and Ben are super cool. You guys keep it up. I'm so excited to see what other tricks you guys learn. And all the best of you guys' competitions going forward. It was so fun having you on the show, and we'll have to have you in studio in the future as well to see if you can trick us again, because that was a lot of fun having you guys on.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot, Asher. That is Asher Kettner. He is a 12-year-old magician. We are also joined by his 9-year-old brother, Ben. They're both members of the Young Magicians of Manitoba. Well, time now is 8:21. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. Well, next up here on the show, Winnipeg's downtown is getting a safety boost this summer. So on Thursday, the Manitoba government announced its plan to spend almost $2.2 million to support 5 downtown community organizations. The funds will be used to build and enhance community partnerships that protect public safety with a focus on de-escalation and wellness. And they can also be used for security upgrades to the organization's offices. Kate Fensky is the CEO of Downtown Winnipeg Biz, and her organization is getting $750,000 from this pool of money. And she joins us here in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Kate, Downtown Biz, $750,000. So how do you plan to spend that money?
It is a significant amount of money for us as an organization. And what we've heard from folks that's really important from businesses, from the public, from downtown residents, is just more visible presence out in the streets. And also at the same time, making sure that people who need help get the help they need. So for us, we're really excited to partner with the Downtown Community Safety Partnership on this. So we're going to be using $500,000 of that funding from the province, as well as $100,000 from the City of Winnipeg, from the Mayor's office, and the commitment there to create the Wayfinders program. And this is actually an evolution of the summer action plan that we've been running the last 2 years, the pilot. And it's about connecting people, folks hired paid positions with lived experience, and having them out there on the street, providing a visible presence, but also connecting with people who need help when they need it. So it could be anything from a safe walk and just more people out there if you want to walk to your car or from your bus stop or to school or anything like that. So providing that service, but also really on the streets connecting with individuals is really important too.
And we've got Greg Burnett, Executive Director of Downtown Community Safety Partnership, with us here as well. Hey there, Greg.
Hi, good morning.
Thanks for joining us. I know you're hoping to come to the studio, but you got stuck in traffic. Very Winnipeg-y situation that you're in.
Friday morning.
Yes, exactly. So I know your organization also getting $750,000, but as Kate kind of mentioned, it seems like there's a blending there of those funds, and seems like lots of joint efforts going on. From your end of things, how are you hoping that to use this funding to improve downtown safety? We just heard a little bit from Kate there, but what's your perspective on how you plan to use that money?
Oh, it'll be the same thing as Kate mentioned. Building on our summer action program, we've found great success both from working with everybody. And that's what I think is really great about this kind of now collaborative effort, all working together. It allows us to expand our hours with the folks we have coming on board. I think we're up to about 36 already that we're going to try and get hired in the next couple of weeks. And again, so expanded hours to the weekends, days of the week, multiple shifts. So a lot of logistics to get in place yet, but again, that's the hope. And working with Kate's teams, other teams downtown, we talk about OPK and other groups. So we're really looking forward to just getting going and helping our downtown here.
So once all this funding has been spent, there's people out and about, that you've hired out on the streets helping people out. What do you hope that looks like, on the ground for, everyday Winnipeggers, in downtown? And I'll start with you, Kate.
There's so many incredible things happening downtown. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. So we always know there's so many good events and festivals and sports in the summer. And so we're really excited to gear up for that. We have some new programs coming this year. But we know that safety and perceptions of safety do impact people's day-to-day experiences here. So it's really about how people feel in this neighborhood. Do they feel safe coming here? Do they feel safe supporting the businesses, going out to the events? And we know the more people there are downtown, the safer people feel. So that's another big thing that we're really trying to lean into. But our hope is that people are seeing the wayfinders, the community wayfinders out there, our host ambassadors team, our Enviro Clean team, and we're also coordinating with Winnipeg Police Service as well with the Downtown Foot Patrol. So no matter where you are downtown, the goal here really is that you're seeing someone else in uniform, in a t-shirt or a vest, knowing that they're there looking out for everyone that is in this community.
And Greg, for you, what are the biggest safety challenges that your organization is going to have to tackle with more of this funding, obviously? But yeah, what are the things going on right now that you're noticing are the biggest issues for safety downtown?
Well, I think when we talk about safety, we need to talk about everybody. So we talk about meeting people on the streets. We're going to be interacting with businesses, but it's also those who are most at risk and vulnerable. We know what's going on in the streets. Resources, supports that are required, but also helping those most in need when they need it. And hopefully we get them on those pathways. We talk about wayfinding onto their pathways to hopefully better roads ahead. Again, that's where our folks are really able to interact and really build those relationships with folks from that demographic as well, right? So there's a lot of work to do on any number of fronts for safety for all.
And Greg, we also just heard from the province that it plans to open the supervised consumption site on Henry Avenue. That is fairly close to the downtown core, and they plan to open it next month. So what impact do you think that will have on downtown once it's open?
Well, I mean, it's like anything. I hope it works well. And again, it's part of a bigger plan that we're all going to work together to provide those supports and services to folks. We're going to work with the folks there and, again, provide the safety we do, again, in building those relationships with folks and making sure that community and the areas around all downtown are going to have perceptions of safety will increase or stay the same. And, again, working with everybody to do that.
Yeah, Kate, anything to add to that in terms of the impacts of that safe consumption, supervised consumption site?
Yeah, we really rely on the experts here for what the solutions are. We know it's not one thing that is going to make the difference when it comes to downtown safety. So as Greg mentioned, it's all of these things happening at the same time. There is critical social supports that need to be put in place. And the Premier said yesterday, their enforcement is also part of this picture. So it's really balancing all of that together. And at the same time, we have to make sure that we're making, that our neighborhood is cared for. When people are coming down and if they see graffiti or if they see litter, it's really important for us. Our teams are out there 7 days a week trying to take that. So it's all of this happening together. And when we look at what's happening, I keep saying, downtown is going to look so different in 3 years. When we look at the redevelopment projects that are happening at Portage Place, Wayway, Marketlands, Railside. We don't have enough time for me to actually list them all. But this brings me a lot of hope. I am seeing more collaboration than I have ever seen in my time in this position with the province, with the city, with DCSP, with police, other community organizations. Winnipeg can do this differently. We need to do this differently, and we need to move quickly.
And finally, just in the last, we have like a minute left here, but you got this big funding. Let's say funding was never an option. Like you had as much funding as you needed. What else do you think could needs to be done to make the city's core more safe? I'll start with you, Kate.
I think it really is about having people here. But in order for people to be here, they need to feel safe. So everyone deserves to be safe. This is a critical important piece of the puzzle. And at the same time, we need more people back. And so I believe that people are, once they're here, they're like, oh, actually, I forgot this was fun. And I'm going to a Sea Bears game or a Gold Eyes game. There's more conferences happening in downtown Winnipeg this year than we've ever seen before. So we got to put our best foot forward as well as Winnipeggers and make sure that we're talking about our city with pride.
And Greg, what more do you think needs to be done to make the city square more safe?
Really what Kate has talked about, I'm hopeful. There's lots of talks with everybody out there. Fire, paramedic, we forget our friends in the paramedic service, fire service, who are out there doing, when we talk about safety and all the work they do. And again, I'm walking downtown all the time, and there's some really great things happening, some really great spaces, and we really need to start talking and promoting that. So a lot of work to do, but we're on the right path.
Well, thank you both for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is Kate Fensky, CEO of Downtown Winnipeg Biz. Greg Burnett is the Executive Director of the Downtown Community Safety Partnership. Time now for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:31, it is a beautiful morning for Friday morning in Winnipeg. We're at 14 right now. We're rising to 21. We start with sunshine, increasing clouds later this afternoon, and a good chance of showers this evening. An 11-year-old First Nations boy was handcuffed and escorted from a Brandon elementary school this week after police say he punched his principal and smashed holes in the drywall. His dad now wants answers. He says his son has oppositional defiant disorder, ADHD, autism, and is intellectually developmentally delayed. He wants to know why the school didn't call his family sooner so they could help de-escalate his son's behavior before calling police.
They should have called us before anything, because we could have went there and solved the problem instead of that escalating and me having to see my son get thrown on the ground by a guy and pushing his knee right into his face and cuffing him.
Now, CBC is not naming his dad to protect the child's identity. In a statement to CBC, Brandon School Division says it is committed to creating a safe, secure learning environment, and police are called only as a last resort. A longtime City of Winnipeg councillor says he may not run again in this fall's civic election. Brian Mays has represented St. Vital since 2011. He says when he was first elected, there was discussion about traffic improvements on St. Mary's Road by 2021. The city is only now commissioning a study to examine the plan. Mays says it has been a struggle to get it looked at, and he says it may be time to wrap up his time in office.
It's been a good run. It's been 14 plus years. I guess my relation with the mayor perhaps isn't all it could be, and I certainly was a fine colleague as a councillor. That went very well, and I guess I'll have to figure out what I want to do over the next few years.
May says he will likely make his decision final next month. Manitoba's premier is calling a Tory MLA's words hateful and divisive after he described the farmer who killed a Cree man 10 years ago as a victim. Tory MLA Josh Ginter made the remark during debate about the right of people to use force to defend their homes. He used the example of the Saskatchewan farmer Gerald Stanley. Stanley was acquitted of second-degree murder after shooting 22-year-old Colton Bushy on his farm in 2016. Melinda Mock is secretary at the Indigenous Bar Association. She found Ginter's remarks deeply troubling.
Homeowners have a right to defend themselves. These questions, however, and the way it was posed by the MLA is emblematic of larger concerns about systemic racism and unequal treatment that already exist in the justice system.
Ginter did not back off from his remarks despite being criticized. People in a small southwest Manitoba community are celebrating their brand new medical clinic. It was built with $2 million they raised themselves. Sandy Armstrong is one of the many who donated to the new Spirit Sands Medical Clinic in Glenborough. She says the community deserves a proper medical facility.
It has definitely done its time. I was almost ready to buy them a new stool for the one office the first time I seen it, but this new clinic is going to be just fantastic. I'm very proud of Glenborough and all the volunteers that are in this town.
Glenborough's current clinic is more than 70 years old. It's in the hospital basement. The new clinic is expected to open in June with official ribbon-cutting ceremony planned for summer. And a Winnipegger wants to help the people of Cuba by sending hundreds of solar panels to that country. Cuba has been going through rolling power blackouts because of a U.S. blockade on fuel imports. As summer approaches, many people in Cuba are without power for 20 hours a day. Andrea Cry is a professional engineer who studied power issues in island nations and is president of the Core Renewable Energy. She set up a fundraiser called Empower Cuba to bring in $50,000 to manufacture and ship solar panels to Cuba.
We're hoping to at least get over 500 panels roughly there. And that it could be more, it could be less. It all depends on global supply chains. And as you know, it's very volatile right now to ship anything globally. So the prices do change quite almost daily.
Cry says a single panel produces 450 to 650 watts, enough to power the essentials in a single-family home in Cuba. You can find the latest news updated throughout your day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Tune into Radio Noon this afternoon. I'll actually be in the host chair. Call-in topic today is, what would you do if you won the lottery? We're actually have someone on who won $50 million after playing the lottery, and they started great, but actually went on to ruin his life, is what he says. So he's going to join us to talk about that and tell us that story. You can call in and tell us what you would do if you won the lottery. That's on Radio Noon after 12:30. Sierra, what's going on with the commute?
Widespread backups due on southbound Henderson due to that collision there. So expect delays there as you head towards the downtown there. As well, Chief Peguis in Maine, there's a stalled vehicle in the westbound middle lane there, so that lane is blocked. And Century and Portage Overpass, there's a stalled vehicle in the northbound curb lane, so that lane is blocked there.
Thank you very much, Sierra. Abby, what's going on with the weather?
We are good. We're enjoying mild conditions, plenty of sunshine for the province today, though we still have a touch of misty conditions in the Dauphin area, but that should burn off and you see a mix of sun and clouds, some rain in the region. Most of the areas down south will warm up close to 20 degrees today.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the associate producers, reporters, hosts, and the folks in our news department, as well as our videographers and YouTube producers. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. We'll see you next week. Have a good weekend.